Have y'all's attention, please. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, Baldwin County Commission regular meeting. Today we have our invocation by Pastor Rick Malagani with the Fairhope Christian Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Joe Davis. If y'all would please stand.
Let's pray. Most gracious, loving God, we call on your presence here today as we gather to deliberate the future of this wonderful county. We bless those leaders that have stepped forward to lead us. We bless all who are here who have business with the county. We ask for your wisdom, your guidance, and direction as we enter these discussions. May everything we say and do bring honor and glory to you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners, and good morning to everyone out there in the audience today, and welcome to our commission meeting today. First order of business is just to make a brief announcement to our staff. As we all know, we have a meeting set for 9:30 today with our budget deliberations. That does not mean the meeting is going to start at 9:30 for those sitting here waiting to ask for money. So that meeting could start at 1:30. You just never know. It's listed for 9:30 and it will be followed directly after this commission meeting. With that being said, Commissioner Gruber, I know you're going to make a motion on these minutes, but if you don't mind, sir, would you please read that whole entire red paragraph when we adopt those minutes?
Okay. You want me to read the prior about the minutes?
Yeah, on item A, the adoption of the minutes, just read all of that for the record.
In the
Prior
red.
to the adoption of the July the 5th, 2022 regular meeting minutes, corrections for the record, servant's error in agenda item B2, case number LV 2013, alcohol license application for Prida Investments LLC doing business as Corner Market, which listed the location of 52668 Highway 31 North by removing North from the address.
All right, Commissioner Gruber has made a motion to adopt the July 5th meeting minutes with the noted correction, removing the word north from the address listed.
I'll second that.
We got a second by Commissioner Underwood. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, next up, Commissioners, is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is ready for your approval. When we approve the consent agenda, note for the record that item BE2 and BN6 has been pulled from that. Excuse me. There's
One's a
one more.
replacement and one's a pull, right?
Yeah.
All right, so not BE2, excuse me. BN6 and BQ6
Or pull.
are pulled. BN6 and BQ6. So I need a motion to adopt the consent agenda, and you need to note that replacement item on BE2 as well. So there's a lot to do on that one motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve our consent agenda, noting that item BE2 has a replacement attachment, competitive bid number WG22-43 award listing.
And does that motion include the BN6 being pulled
Yes,
and
it
the
does.
BQ6 being pulled? Okay.
BN6 and BQ6 have those items pulled as suggested in the work session.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve the consent agenda with BE2 exception, BN6 being pulled, and BQ6. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second?
Got a
I second it.
I think I got a second by some people. Maybe Commissioner Gruber seconded it first.
Take your pick.
2 seconds.
Just to note for the record, BE2 was a competitive bid, and our Wanda Galtney called and said that the bid amount was incorrect in the previous listing, so it has been updated to be correct to reflect in this agenda. So, any further discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All righty. Now to the fun part. What we're all waiting on, right? We're now in our public hearings section of the meeting. But we don't have any presentations today, so we're in the public hearing section. And the first one that we have is item DA1, which is Comcast of Alabama LLC Cable Television System Franchise Agreement. There's a replacement item in this where the staff recommendation has been revised, and when we make a motion on this, one of the commissioners up here will read staff's recommendation from that. If not, I have it pulled up and I can read it for them. I will open this public hearing. Is there anybody here to wish to speak in favor of or against this project?
I have no one signed up, Mr. Chairman.
No one signed up? Okay. Anybody in the audience, a lot of people in the audience, y'all wish to speak for or against Comcast of Alabama Cable Television Franchise Agreement? Thank y'all. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the Comcast of Alabama LLC Cable Television System Franchise Agreement, noting replacement item.
Got a motion by Commissioner Underwood.
Got a second?
Second by Commissioner Davis to approve item DA1. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next up, we have a highway case. Item DN1. This is a vacation of unpaved portion of Etta Smith Road. Our highway engineer is approaching the podium. Joey, as soon as you finish presenting this, I'll open the public hearing.
Okay, good morning. So this is basically an unpaved dirt road called Etta Smith Road. It comes out right at the intersection of County Road 9 and County Road 32. So a little bit of an unsafe condition to where it connects to the road. But we've recently partnered with Mobile NEP to do a large stabilization project down there. We had a large head cut that was going through there. So we've spent about, I don't know, I think it was a few $1 million down there with partnership with Mobile NEP to stabilize this. And the adjacent landowners approached us, was on board with us vacating this road to make everything a little safer in the future. So if you got any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Joey. Do y'all have any questions for Joey? Okay.
No, sir.
Public hearing is now open on case DN1, the vacation of unportioned right-of-way of Etta Smith Road. Ron, I think we've got somebody signed up to speak on this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jason, I cannot. Cadulas.
Jason. Yep.
Okay.
Jason, if you want to, just come right up here. I'll pull that microphone down to you where you can talk into it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just wanted to speak in favor of this vacation. As Mr. Nunley indicated, we've made a significant investment along that stream segment there that was unstable and causing problems to the county for some time. This will allow a nice buffer to this recent investment, as well as provide it's been a common dumping area for some time as well. We've even seen folks going through there as we're under construction, eyeing it with trailers of stuff, and have luckily moved on. But for the long-term maintenance issues on the project, as well as the safety aspect and access for Mr. Law's parcel, we would like to see it vacated.
All right. Thank you.
Jason, if you would, what's your title with NEP?
Restoration Project Manager.
Okay, that's what I thought, but just wanted everybody to hear that. Thank you.
And y'all got any other questions for Jason? All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this vacation of right-of-way? All right. Public hearing is now closed. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve case number BAC-22-2, vacation of a unpaved portion of Ada Smith Road, and it is adopt resolution in 2022-094, which is approves the vacation of the unpaved portion of Ada Smith Road, per the request and recommendation of the county engineer in accordance with section 23-4-2 of the Code of Alabama 1975.
We got a motion by Commissioner Gruber.
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Underwood to approve case number VAC/22/2, the vacation of unpaved portion of Etta Smith Road. Any further discussion?
I just want to make a comment. Whenever NEP took on this project and we actually went out there, I didn't get to go to the last meeting that you guys had, I think but I was at the prior meeting. And when I drove down there on County Road 9, and turned off County Road 32 and turned off County Road 9, I immediately thought how dangerous this is, and that this would never be approved as a turning in off of this road. And so I started thinking about it, and actually I think I called the county engineer that day and talked to him, and I'm just glad that you guys are seeing this come to fruition, because we have the County Road 32 bridge that needs replacing, and I believe the traffic count is somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 to 10,000 cars a day that go across that bridge, which means there's 9,000 to 10,000 cars go through that intersection every day, and that is so dangerous right in there. So if there is no other reason, it's a danger, and there is a different entrance in there. So I think this is an awesome safety improvement.
Thank you, Commissioner Underwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next up, Matthew. You can either sit there or come up, however you want to do it. We got some planning and zoning things taking place today. Our first one is item DR1. This is case number TA/2202, amendments to the Baldwin County zoning ordinance, adding Planning District 8 zoning map and local provisions. I will let our planning director, Matthew Brown, speak on this, and once he gets through speaking, commissioners, y'all have any questions, ask him questions, and I will open the public hearing then.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We do have 3 items today, so I just want to real quickly thank all the staff members who've put a lot of time into these 3 items. I drew the short straw and will be presenting all 3, but a lot of work from the team has gone into these, and I want to thank each of them. So this first item is the amendments to the Baldwin County zoning ordinance to add Planning District 8. We'll talk about this process here as part of this agenda item, but this is one of the 6 rule books we govern in the Planning and Zoning Department, so today's proposed amendment is for the zoning ordinance rule book. I'm going to give an overview of this process. We're going to talk about the timeline, then we're going to look at the local provisions and maps and recommendations that were made jointly by both committees, because District 8 and District 37 were going through this process at the same time, and then additional zoning requests that have come in since the Planning Commission meeting. Then we'll have our staff recommendation. So first of all, the process timeline. As a reminder, zoning in Baldwin County is a citizen-driven process. The citizens pursue this, they petition the county commission, then they go get signatures, and the statute, I use this illustration of a stream. Once you jump in the stream, it just carries you down the stream, because the statute sets all sorts of timelines. There's a referendum that takes place, and then there's an advisory committee that's established if the referendum is in the affirmative to help prepare these different zoning provisions. So I'm going to talk about the process timeline. August 7th, District 8 turned in a request to the County Commission, and November 2nd, District 37 turned in a request to the County Commission. From this point on, they followed the exact same timeline, so we're using them together. On December 7th, we accepted the petition with signatures, and the judge of probate scheduled for an election, or we asked the judge of probate to schedule an election for no later than March 7th. On February 15th, that election actually took place. In District 8, it was a little bit closer. It was 179 yes and 172 no. In District 37, it was a landslide in favor of zoning, 367 yes and 68 no. On March 15th, this county commission appointed an advisory committee. Those had to be registered voters from within the districts. April 7th, we had our first advisory committee meeting. Our first one started at 8:30 in the morning, and the next one started at 10 a.m. Right here in Fairhope. Those were published public meetings, and anybody could come and participate. The advisory committee worked very hard and did a great job. We had 8 meetings with the final one on May 26th. That resulted in a unanimous recommendation from both advisory committees for their respective proposals. I do want to take a second. I think we have a number of the advisory committee members here today. I'm not going to name them off, but if you're here and served in that voluntary capacity, would you stand up just real quickly, just so that way we have see who some of our advisory committee members were. So we have 4 of the 10 who participated, and we appreciate their hard work on that committee. From there, that went to the Planning Commission. There was a public hearing at the Planning Commission where there was an opportunity to give comments and feedback and request changes. That was on June 2nd. The Planning Commission made one small modification about animal husbandry and then recommended approval. And then July 19th, that's today, is the final consideration by the Baldwin County Commission. During that timeline, you'll see in the red here, there was a 180-day moratorium against prohibiting any larger type developments, and that will cease when this zoning ordinance is adopted. So let's talk about the local provisions. We're going to start by looking at the joint recommendations of both advisory committees. What I'm going to do as I go through these, I'll show what the proposal was, and then I'll explain how that's different from the we'll call it the general ordinance, the ordinance adopted by other districts. So first is a proposal to require 40-foot landscape buffers between major residential subdivisions and farmland, and 10 to 20-foot landscape buffers between major residential subdivisions and less intense zoning uses. This is different because currently there is no buffer requirement between rural agricultural and major subdivision, residential subdivision developments. Next change is to increase the aesthetic road frontage landscape buffer requirement for a major project that abuts a major road. The full ordinance only requires a 10-foot buffer. This will change that, increase it a little bit. The full ordinance does not require native plants. This will require native plants, and this one will also require overstory trees, whereas the current ordinance doesn't specify that for the other districts. Next amendment here requires a visual barrier, landscape barrier for certain types of developments, and those include mini warehouse, recreational vehicle park, manufactured home park, hotel, motel, and a couple other items on there. Again, this is different because many of the other districts do not have this requirement. Another proposed amendment requires the construction of a sidewalk for major projects that abut a major road, and that's specified there. Currently, that's not required in other districts. Another requirement is that wetlands in major subdivisions be set aside in common areas, and that not apply to man-made wetlands. This is pretty similar to what we have in other districts, but some slight modifications for these 2 areas. So this was a really important item, and it was hotly debated. All these items were pretty hotly debated among the advisory committee and input that we received throughout the process. But was an animal husbandry allowance even in residential parcels. But we specified certain minimum acreage. If you do have a residential parcel that's have a certain minimum acreage, to make it clear that you could have some animal husbandry that takes place there as long as it's not on a large commercial scale on those residential lots. Next amendment here allows a professionally prepared parking study to reduce the parking space requirements for a proposed development. The goal here is to try to reduce, if it's not necessary, reduce the amount of impervious area that goes into parking. Sometimes you can have a sea of parking lot, and if they can prove that it's not required, then we would rather not have all that impervious area on a project. Next requirement here was a reduction of the allowable density of manufactured home parks to 4 units per acre, and then limit auto convenience market gas station to the major commercial B4 districts. One item that was removed, but I want to note it here because it was heard by the Planning Commission, we worked on language that allowed the reversion of a rezoning, and it's called speculative rezoning language. If someone rezones a piece of property and then it just sits there and never gets developed, it would allow some reversion back to the old zoning. So you don't have this undeveloped zoned properties floating out there. Legal worked very closely with us. We decided we needed to kind of step back and just do some double checking on this and propose it later for the full ordinance. It didn't really make sense to just have it for 2 districts, but we think that this could be a very important tool moving forward. The next proposal disallows traditional steel panel siding as the front facade of a commercial building. And you can see the specific language there. This is not current. This only applies to mini warehouses in the full ordinance currently. And then this next proposal, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it. It is our largest change to the zoning ordinance in some time, I believe. And I consider it to be one of our most, what I'll call, citizen positive changes to zoning in Baldwin County in possibly a couple decades. So I'm going to explain it. This creates a new community preservation district. And I've had a lot of folks that say they don't like the community preservation. This is not about environmental preservation or anything like that. It's about community, literally just the community itself, whether that's a rural community, a small historic community, but it's called the Community Preservation District. And it's designed to preserve historic rural and suburban communities by creating a stronger grandfather status for existing uses while still triggering normal rezoning and development requirements of the ordinance when a major change is proposed. So the best way to think about this is a zoning light for rural areas that doesn't kind of have the full weight of the ordinance sitting on ma and pa when they try and put a shed in their backyard or a chicken coop in their backyard, but it still kicks in when there's a change that's going to really affect the compatibility or the development pattern in the area. So this is a brand new district in the zoning ordinance. So I have a little flow chart here. I'm going to explain how this works. So if you own undeveloped property and it's community preservation district and you want to build a single family home or you want to build a barn, well, you would skip our department and you would go straight to get a building permit. And there are some very basic setbacks you would be required to meet. We've already coordinated with Eddie, the building official, and we have a little process that we'll work out there to still make sure those get checked. But they would not have to have a permit in our department, and they would go straight to that building permit. But if you do something that triggers a commission site plan approval under the zoning ordinance, which could be developing a gas station, developing a residential subdivision, then we would ask, does this trigger a commission site plan approval? And if the answer is yes, then it would come and they would have to request a rezoning, would be the first step. And it would be the same rezoning process that would occur. We'd look at the surrounding existing uses to judge compatibility. And then once that rezoning took place, if it was approved, the full ordinance as it applies to that newly rezoned district would apply to that development. So these are the parameters that trigger that. This already exists in our zoning ordinance for commission site plan approval, and this is what would trigger the change that would trigger them having to get a rezoning in this community preservation district and going through that full process. If they don't trigger that, again, they just go and get their building permit and continue on. So we think that this is going to be a really positive change for kind of the average rural citizen in the area who desires zoning but is a little intimidated by the full 200 to 300 page document. Essentially, this entire portion, this is a 3-page zoning ordinance for folks within that community preservation district. If approved, fully zoned ordinance applies only, again, on the newly rezoned parcel. All right, so now we're going to look at some recommendations that were exclusive to District 8. Everything we just looked at were joint recommendations from both advisory committees. So exclusive to District 8, they asked for a change in outdoor recreation district that clarified what accessory permitted uses were in that area, and just a very minor modification from what's currently in the full body of the ordinance. They also have, this is one of our other large changes. District 8 and District 37 both have something similar, but they're a little different, so I'm going to address them separately. So they have a proposal that encourages the clustering of high-intensity commercial and residential developments at major activity nodes by limiting where those rezonings can be requested within the district. And you can see the table on the screen. It identifies those intersections and then identifies what rezonings can be requested in that intersection. Now, I'm going to show you a map of what those different circumferences and radiuses look like, but I just want to explain briefly some of the basis of this. One thing to keep in mind is that a zoning ordinance is meant to evolve over time as a community evolves. So the fact that something is prohibited today does not mean it's prohibited forever into the future. All right? Essentially, this would require an additional step before someone could pursue one of these outside of that circle. They would first have to request that the zoning ordinance be amended to expand that circle and justify the basis for that. And then they would pursue a zoning and then potentially a subdivision, depending on the type of thing they were requesting. So this is different because in most districts, there are some who do exclude different zonings, but in most districts, you can request any type of rezoning in any area. So here are the major activity nodes. You can see that on the screen with the blue dots. Those are the 4 intersections in District 8 where those major activity nodes were identified. The yellow on here represents the areas where they'll allow RSF3, RSF4, RTF4, RSF6, and RTF6. The orange circles are where District 8 has limited RMF6, which is lighter apartment complex type zoning, and HDR, which is higher density apartment complex zoning or multifamily zoning that allows 12 units per acre. Those would be limited to those orange circles. B3 is limited to the red circles. And then B4, which you think of B4 like Home Depots, Publix's, stuff like that, to the purple circles. Again, this would only be for District 8. So this is the final map recommended by the Advisory Committee for District 8. You can see the Community Preservation District. That's the light brown zoning designation on the map. There were a couple additional small recommendations that you will actually see right in your proposed resolution. These are specific to certain properties. One is you can see these properties listed on the screen. In this case, the developer wanted to propose a mix of zonings and some smaller lot sizes. And the advisory committee looked at his proposal, they looked at the transitions, and they said that this met all what they felt was all the requirements, and the advisory committee recommended that with these properties, these rezonings with these dimensional requirements be accepted. There were also 2 properties at Twin Beach Road and Thompson Hall Road that are proposed for smaller townhome apartments, but they both have some odd conditions associated with them, associated with traffic improvements and things like that. And so the committee said, well, listen, we support these having the proper zoning designation. However, if something happens and those conditions expire and they can't build these projects, we want that reversion language to apply to these. So we worked with legal counsel, and so we have some special reversion language that would allow the commission to optionally revert these back to RA or RSFE zoning if they don't obtain a building permit within 3 years. So that is the advisory committee unanimous recommendation as modified by the planning commission, and now today we have some additional zoning requests. So just for clarification, everything that you see in 2 represents staff's recommendation based on what was recommended by the advisory committee and the planning commission. These new requests have come in since the planning commission, and staff is proposing the same 3-year reversion language apply to these if you choose to accept these requests that have come in the past couple weeks, and most of them actually came in Thursday or Friday. So we're going to go through these one at a time. There are 2 for District 8. So zoning request number 1 deals with 2 parcels behind the new Publix down there on Twin Beach. The request is that these parcels come in with the zoning of high density residential. So we're zooming on the map here, and you can see these 2 parcels. They're right behind, again, that Publix property. You notice the circles on the map. So this is one of the circles that the group designated as an appropriate location for high density residential. You'll see that this goes beyond the circle. There's language in there that says if a parcel is bisected by one of these circles, then they can go up to 500 feet beyond that circle. And we did the measurement on here, and this it appears to fit right in that 500 feet when you include that. So it would really be a question for the commission if they want to go ahead and just bring this in out the gate with that 3-year reversionary language. They got 3 years to get a building permit for this project and go through the process, but bring it in as high-density residential. So that's request number 1. Request number 2 is a small parcel that is currently zoned RSFE because it has an old house on it, but we understand the house needs to be demolished, and the owner is asking that it be zoned B2 because they feel that's the most appropriate use, and it's located on 98. You see it's just a little bit north of that public site. The property immediately to the south is already B3. I believe it's a storage facility, and the advisory committee, we feel the advisory committee probably would have accepted this if that citizen had brought it in during the advisory committee process with this particular zoning. So staff's recommendation then on this project is shown. We have 2 requests before the commission that we look to you for direction on whether or not we want to bring those in with that zoning or just go ahead and accept the map as proposed.
Commissioners, do y'all have any questions for Matthew? You don't have to turn.
No, I don't.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
I think Commissioner Underwood's got something.
I totally get the one with the vacant house on it. I'm just thinking about the other one right now. I didn't see that till this morning. It's so surrounded by the city limits that it's a little complicated, this whole district is.
Matthew, you said that on that request that you had nobody that was in opposition of that, and that the advisory committee would allow that.
So that was specifically with the B2. I don't know what the advisory committee would have said, except that the advisory committee did designate the circle. They did say that HDR was appropriate in this circle.
Okay.
And that the citizen didn't bring it at that time, but they've brought it now. I think this came in on Friday.
And the pink is what?
B2.
Okay, it's a
B2.
business already.
It was already proposed business by the advisory.
Okay, I understand. I'm all right. Okay.
I want to open this public hearing. All right, the public hearing is now open on case TA 22002. Ron, do we have anybody signed up?
There's Mr. Evan Parrott, if there's questions.
Okay. Do y'all have any questions for that? Where's he at? Come on up and just state your name, what are you representing, and if any of the commissioners have any questions for you, they'll ask you.
Good morning. Evan Parrott of Maynard, Cooper & Gale here on behalf of RSA, and we're in support of the staff recommendations and just wanted to answer any questions if there were any.
All right, so are you in support of any particular of the other extra requests, or just the main request that was made?
Just the main staff recommendation.
Okay.
RSA doesn't have a position on any of the subsequent items.
Do y'all have any questions for RSA?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else that didn't sign up to speak? Yes, sir. Mr. Deal, come on up.
David Deal. Sorry I didn't sign up. I live in the Old Battles Village neighborhood, and I fully support the request for HDR.
Okay.
There.
Thank you.
So, anybody else sign up wishing to speak on this? Right. Or if you're not signed up, I'll give you the opportunity to say something about it. Okay. Matthew, while I've got this public hearing open, I just want to make sure, is this going to just be one vote, or are we going to do a couple votes here?
I think it could be handled either way. You could vote on each of the individual requests, which may be necessary on the next one, so that might be good to test it right now.
Okay.
And then do a final vote on the full recommendation based on after the 2 individual requests are addressed.
Does that sound good, Brad?
Yeah, that's fine.
So we're gonna act on the request first, and then recommend, and then we'll vote on the approval. All right, so Commissioners, as a request number 1 is coming in with an HDR request to be built within that circle and of the guidelines of which this committee has said HDR is allowed. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve
request number 1.
HDR 1 in that district as requested.
And I'll second that.
We got a motion by Commissioner Gruber, a second by Commissioner Davis to approve the zoning request number 1. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we're on to request number 2. This is a request for a B2 parcel.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve the request for that parcel to be B2.
And I second that motion.
We got a motion by Commissioner Underwood, a second by Commissioner Gruber to approve zoning request number 2 in the Planning District 8. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Next up, we're going to vote on the main staff recommendation there, number 1.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt case number TA 22002, amendments to the Baldwin County Ordinance, adding Planning District 8 zoning map and location. And then it's also adopt resolution 2022-107, which approves the amendments to the Baldwin County zoning ordinance, adding District 8 zoning map and local provisions.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Gruber, second by Commissioner Davis. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. That worked well, Matthew?
That worked great.
First run for everything, right? It's the first time. All right, next up, we have case number TA/22003. Similar type situation here. Matthew.
All right, Commissioners, thank you again. On District 37, a lot of this staff report is identical, so we're not going to repeat it. We'll jump straight to the District 37 request, but this followed the same timeline, same process of what we just discussed, but we'll go right to those recommendations exclusive to District 37 in this case. So they had a couple additional items that were exclusive to District 37. First of all, they had a requirement that you use native plants in all required landscape buffers. Currently, the full zoning ordinance does not require this. They increased the wetland buffer requirement in District 37 to create a 100-foot stream buffer for major projects along Fish River, and then the regular wetland buffer to 50 feet. Currently, in the regular zoning ordinance, it's a 30-foot wetland and stream buffer for all streams and wetlands.
Matthew, can I stop you right there for a second?
Yes, sir.
Brad, I got a question, and now since they asked me the question and my memory's foggy, did I close that public hearing on the last one?
No.
Okay, so what do I need to do?
So just hammer it closed now.
Sorry, Matthew. Sorry, guys. I thought, and thank y'all for the catch. And no texts were coming over my phone or nothing like that. So, I mean, in my mind, I thought I did it. In my mind, I wanted to do it.
I normally mark it when you do that, but I don't have it marked here. But we got all those motions.
So I'm gonna that old one's gone.
Yeah.
So, all right, Matthew, I'm sorry about that, buddy. I didn't want this to go on any further. I got parties in my mind, budget on my mind. It's a great day to be a chairman.
All right. So the next proposal relates to, very similar to District 8 had, was encouraging the clustering of high-intensity commercial and residential developments at major activity nodes. District 37 varies slightly, and so we want to discuss those and go through them. There was a lot of debate in District 37 specifically about apartment complexes. There's currently a lot of undeveloped but in the development phase apartment complexes that weren't held up by this moratorium or the city's moratorium. And overall, the committee felt that there needed to be some slowdown or pause in this area because so much of it is rural once you get west of 181, while we see this area evolve and develop over time to make sure those development patterns are occurring in an appropriate manner, just recognizing the health, safety, and wellness of the district. And we have a statement in our agenda item regarding some of the work and study and effort that went into making some of these decisions and conclusions. But so we'll look at those maps from District 37 now. So here's their proposed map. You see in blue are their major activity nodes, and then what they are recommending within each of those nodes at different radiuses. So in yellow, they allow RSF3, RSF4, RTF4, RSF6, and RTF6, are limited to these circles shown here. RMF6 is limited to the orange circles, and this is where this is different than District 8. District 37 proposed a complete prohibition of HDR at this time in District 37, even within those two orange circles. So they're just limiting it to lower density apartment complexes within those orange circles. Again, that was based on the number of units in queue currently, so that way we let that catch up and see whether or not make sure we have the right balance of housing units in this district. B3 would be limited to the red circles. B4 would be limited to the purple circles. So this is the final map proposed by the District 37 Advisory Committee. District 37 did have one non-actionable recommendation, and they wanted to take some type of action, but this is a big item here, so I said let's make a non-actionable recommendation on this. So I'm going to read it to the County Commission. Believing that the County Commission and municipalities should not bear the costs of stream restoration within our county, the District 37 Advisory Committee would like to recommend that consideration be given to limit post-development runoff volumes to be less than or equal to pre-development runoff volumes or similar measures to preserve our natural stream resources. Staff took this, and we had a lot of great dialogue with the Highway Department. This is a big issue. We have a lot of stream restoration studies taking place, or I said that wrong, but watershed studies taking place throughout the county. Currently, and the standard, I think, around the country is that when a development, the post-development stormwater rate must be less than the pre-development stormwater rate. But that doesn't mean the volume is less. Over time, it still may produce the same amount or quite a bit more volume. And so the question is, what is the long-term impacts to all of our streams as more and more of our surfaces become impervious? There can be unintended consequences in how you approach a solution like this. So we knew we wanted to be cautious about just jumping into some ordinance change, but they did want to make some comment to the commission through this non-actionable recommendation here. I want to point out one other mistake that we made as staff, just something we didn't catch. Rockwell Place, it's currently an approved apartment complex. I forget off the top of my head, is that 152 units, Buford?
I believe that's right.
Okay. And that should have been zoned high density residential. So we're including that in our recommendation because that is what it is being currently developed at right now and already approved. So now this gets to additional zoning requests. We have had 5 come in, including one at 11:59 p.m. last night. So these have continued to roll in the door. I'll go through these one at a time, and then we can process them just like we did previously. Again, the staff recommendation is number 2, and then we'll look to you all for some direction on number 3. I'm going to try and tell some of the pros and cons of each of these as I go through them, but many of these came in Friday. So the first request here is a simpler one. This is someone who would like to, currently have there's a residential home on this property, but it is being used as a office for an engineer or an architect. And they noted that, and they said, well, listen, this is being used commercially right now, so it should be B2. We think the advisory committee would have accepted this if it had come in the door during those advisory committee meetings, but it didn't, so they're requesting B2 at this time. And there's a lot of offices right along this area on Gayfer Road. The next request, zoning request number 2, is apartment complex, a request for high density residential. That's 12 units per acre on St. Michael's Way. That's where the Catholic high school is there. You can see this here. You can see we have mostly community preservation district. East of here, a lot of that would be rural if it weren't for the new community preservation district. And you have RA, rural agricultural there to the west. You can see the land here. It is very rural land type. I do want to talk here. I think this applicant's here. They did come to our planning commission. I think they've brought a number of attorneys with them, which is certainly fine. So I want to clarify what took place on this project. So the applicant initially met with us well over a year ago, saying they wanted to put apartment complexes here, but they just wanted to put them on a part of the property. And we said, well, you can't just put you got to subdivide that property if you want to just put it on part, or you got to make the whole thing part of the apartment complex. We gave them that option as well. But then down the road, you'll have to remove that from the apartment complex later, because it'll be all part of it since it's one giant lot. So they opted to go through the subdivision process and divide it into 2 lots. So here's a quick timeline. On February 8th, 2022, the applicant submitted an incomplete planned unit development application. Our department has a very rigorous process that has really streamlined our application process for those who submit complete applications. But we will not accept, and we will not accept payment for an incomplete application in our department. So they submitted an incomplete application on February 8th. I do have Buford King here because he handled this project. We're very closely with it in case any more detailed questions come up. He had created this timeline for us. We notified them on that same day what those deficiencies were and told them it was deficient. 2 major deficiencies. They did not have a traffic study. We cannot review an apartment complex without a traffic study. And they did not have a drainage in there, a drainage study for the apartment complex. So February 11th rolls along, and the applicant attempted to submit some more documents, some construction plans, and we reminded them that it was an incomplete application. They needed to get us the complete documents. We did all this knowing that a zoning referendum was about to take place. So we were trying to help this applicant out, not in an inappropriate way, but we just wanted to make sure they were aware that they had an incomplete application. February 15th rolls around, the votes in the affirmative, they still do not have a complete application in our department. We have been very consistent. They are not the only one who were in this situation, that if it wasn't complete on the day of the vote, it is now caught up by the moratorium and it will be reevaluated. We spent time with legal counsel as well, evaluating this and some other cases that were in question at the time in our position on that. Anyways, I'm not going to go over the rest of this timeline, but since then they've made other requests, they've submitted other documents, and it wasn't until April 19th that we got a traffic study, April 18th, 2 months later, and on the 19th they still had not given us a correct drainage report for the apartment complex. They uploaded an old one for the 2-lot subdivision. So that's where that project stands. Zoning request number 3, I'm going to move forward to the next one now. This is another request for high-density residential. Again, that's 12 units per acre apartment complex. This one is a little bit closer to one of the activity nodes. You can see here on the screen. It's right behind the new Publix that's being proposed. The unique thing again is that District 37 proposed no high-density residential. They probably would have supported some portion of this if it had been RMF 6. They designated the purple circle as where RMF 6, that's a lower density apartment complex or townhomes, are permitted. But the applicant is specifically wanting high-density residential in this case. We did receive some opposition letters from the neighboring property owner on Friday. You can see kind of the residential or the current development status of the land there. All right, zoning request number 4. Y'all heard from Mr. Johnson yesterday. He attended a work session and just spoke at the end of that work session in the public comment period. This is Mr. Johnson's property highlighted in blue here. So this is zoning request number 4. He's requesting the portion of his parcel that is within Planning District 37 be zoned residential single family 2. It does border Fairhope Falls development, which is RSF 4. So there is certainly an argument that of the compatibility of adjacent properties there. We think this is a good candidate, though, for that reversion language. So that way, if it becomes stagnant and there's no development activity, then that might warrant the option of reverting back to a rural zoning down the road. This final one came in at 11:59 last night. I encouraged the individual to send an agent. They said they have COVID. They're requesting the northeast corner of Gayfer and Bishop be zoned for some business, but there's no indication of what the business is or what they're doing. So I told them via email this morning, most likely they're just going to have to go through the rezoning process. It's probably wouldn't be a difficult process for them, but we just don't know any more details about what they're requesting. So those are our requests. Staff recommendation is going to be the same as before, and then we'll have these 5 requests that y'all can discuss.
Do y'all have any questions for Matthew?
I just want to make sure we know which one they are. 'Cause
Yeah.
you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there.
There we go. We got the 5th one added there. Buford's
5
added
was
as
the
we
last
go.
one that was submitted, right?
Yeah, 5 was the last one submitted, but I'll make
That's
sure
right.
I
So
get
these
2,
are-
3, and 4 right.
When we go through them one at a time, I'll put it up on the screen and I have them requote number 1, number 2, number
Okay.
3. And so if we just, when you make your motion, if you identify number 1 as shown on the screen, then we'll go with that.
Okay.
If that works for everybody.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing on case TA 22003. We're going to do the same as follows. Matthew, if you will put the request, this is number 1.
Has anybody signed up?
Is there anybody here that wants to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, I have several people signed up.
For request number 1?
No.
Is anybody here?
I don't think we've even, when you open public.
Okay, so yeah, anybody that's signed up to speak on this whole thing, just come on up. What we got, Ron, on this one?
First, Mr. Chairman, is Andy Alexander.
Okay, it's Alexander. Come right up here to the podium here.
Just not to confuse, I'm Andy Alexander, but we're actually on parcel 2. Parcel 2, Matt?
Yeah, we got it on the septic.
Okay, all right. So we've been in the apartment business. We're from Atlanta, Georgia. We've been in the apartment business for 44 years now. We own property in Mobile, Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. We're in 5 southern states. Mr. Brown showed a sign that said we first talked about this on February 8th, but the reality is we first started talking with the county on this back in June of 21. So we've been working on this project for quite some time. Actually, since 2020, we've been working on it. Unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of the bank interest, a lot of the contractor interest has, been taking the time to get done. But, we've put a lot into this project. The owner of this property's owned it for a long time. We've been working with him since 2020. And, we've invested over $560,000 in this project in studies. This is a complete set of development plans, which you just don't put together in a month and a half, 2 months. So I don't think that, the thought that we first started talking about this on February 8th is anywhere near correct. Some others are going to talk about some of the other provisions here, but, we've prided ourselves on building, fine and nice properties. The rental on this property will go from almost $1,350 on a 1-bedroom up to $1,800 for a 3-bedroom. So it's a quality asset. This is a project that we just finished in Kingsland, Georgia. And again, gets the same structure of rents. And if you have any questions about me, I'm more than glad to answer them. But, we're serious in the apartment business, multifamily business, and we build a really fine product. So we'd really like you to consider our project.
Thank you. Do y'all have any questions?
I do have a question. You said you started talking about this in June of 2021, but when did you actually submit an application?
Well, As far as I know, the application was submitted back last year in '21. The timeline here says, there have been conversations with the county all along, with the county instructing us on what to do next and what to do next and what to do next.
Say a conversation is not the same as a submittal?
We hired a local engineering firm, Faber Engineering, and they were taking us through the process. So they have a representative here as well, and they're going to speak. But this isn't something that we just started on, and it started well before even concept of the new regulations were even an issue or even thought of.
Do y'all have any more questions?
No, sir.
Right.
Thank you.
Next up, Ron.
Next, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Aaron McCarty.
Good morning, I'm Aaron McCurdy, represent Faber Engineering on that project, Odyssey at St. Michael. I wanted to provide a little bit more context in addition to the letter that I provided with you. As Mr. Alexander stated, this has been in the works for some time. We had our pre-application, or my client had their pre-application meeting with the county in June of 2021. At that time, they recommended that, as Mr. Brown stated, divide the property up first and then provide your submittal for the apartment complex. So that's what Faber did. So the plat applications were reviewed in September, October, November, January, and then in January and February, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the lot division, and so that occurred on February the 3rd. So February the 8th is when we filed the PUD application. We got notice the next day that there were allegedly incomplete items that were not included, and then of course the moratorium occurred on February the 15th. My client takes issue with the incomplete application and requests that it be considered pending because of two things. First, the traffic study. There's been a lot of talk about a traffic study being required. We did eventually get one which said that there would be no impact, but the regulations which were referred to us when it was rejected and said, look at these regulations, 5.17 and 5.514. I want to read to you a portion of 5.514. It says, quote, at all times, the applicant can choose to bypass the study and accept the improvements required by the county as conditions of subdivision approval. And that's what my client did. They did not submit a traffic study because, according to the regulations, a traffic study was not required. One of the things Mr. Brown mentioned, I don't think intentionally, but that the drainage narrative was not included. That's incorrect. The drainage narrative was included, but it simply did not have the updated project name. As you all know, that street changed from Higbee Farms to now St. Michael's. So all that needed to be done was to update that title to say from Odyssey at Higbee Farms to Odyssey at St. Michael. So because of those two things, a traffic study not being required and a drainage narrative being provided, we request that the application be considered pending. And if today you don't deem that it is pending, then at least allow that particular piece of property to be zoned HDR, given the work that's been done with the county and the fact that it is nearby a school and luxury RV park, and then within a mile of the Publix. But so that's our timeline. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have about that process.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. I'm sorry. I'm next.
Mr. Joe Thetford.
Good morning. I'm Joe Thetford on behalf of Chasen & Chasen. I represent Robert Randall. Robert is the property owner of this parcel highlighted in blue. I wanted to point out a few things that I think justify high-density residential zoning for this particular piece of property. The first is that Robert Randall had no notice of this zoning election. And, okay, well, maybe that's his fault or not a problem. But the zoning, the act, when you bring zoning districts into county zoning, says notice of the election shall be published 4 times during the 30-day period immediately preceding the date of the election in a newspaper of general circulation in Baldwin County. Here, Notice was published in the Onlooker on December 15th of 21. That's more than 30 days before. It was then published in the Islander on January 19th of 22. And then it switches to the Onlooker on January 26th of 22, Onlooker February 9th of 22, and Onlooker February 2nd of 22. And so we believe that because it didn't publish 4 times in a paper, and also it wasn't the Courier, that statutory notice was not properly provided of this election, and that negatively impacted Robert Randall because he was unaware of the election. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is vested rights. And you've heard Aaron a moment ago and Andy talk about the work that's been done. Over $550,000 has been spent. My client, Robert, took this property off of the market during a hot real estate market in furtherance of this development. They've got the plans. They worked with the county hand in hand, going back to the subdivision. So it wasn't just February. It's going back to June of 21, and their investment actually began long before that. And so, because of all that time, energy, money, we believe that Robert has acquired vested rights. And I'll tell you, an amendment to a zoning ordinance, as here, must stand or fall on vested rights, which depend for their existence on equitable fairness, both to the property owner and to the general public. It's not fair to change the rules in the middle of the game on Robert Alexander and his investors. The second thing I wanted to mention, and I'll be very brief here, on that moratorium, that's what Aaron was just talking about. The zoning ordinance says applications for structures and uses properly submitted prior to an affirmative vote of zoning, the moratorium won't apply to them. That goes hand in hand with vested rights, but unfortunately the county, the planning department, has taken the position that the moratorium does apply even though the application was submitted prior to the vote. The final thing I want to talk about is, regardless of the vested rights, this is a high-density residential, which is what we're requesting the zoning be, is an appropriate use of this parcel. The best evidence of that is the fact that when it was unzoned, my client, Robert Randall, and his investors sought to develop this property. They did studies showing that it's going to rent out. There's a need for high-density residential zoning in Baldwin County. It's a mile from the intersection at 104 and 181, where you've got a hospital, a Publix, a gas station, it's a significantly developed intersection, and it's next door to a recreational vehicle district. And so high-density residential is an appropriate zoning here. And that is the last reason that I think that we'd ask you to, if you're going to adopt the zoning map as it's been given to you, that you amend this particular tax parcel identified on the screen here for high-density residential zoning. I'm here for questions.
Do you have any questions?
No. Thank y'all.
Anybody else on this one?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Matthew, can you come back up and maybe, I mean, they said a lot of stuff you didn't do or did do. Can you take care of yourself?
Sure. So let me just discuss these one at a time. So I actually was at they did have a pre-application meeting a year prior, and I did mention that. I didn't want to allude that we started this on February 8th. I did mention a year prior, and they came in proposing apartment complex on that site, and we gave them two options. We said, you can move forward as you're proposing here, but this is one site, so it'll move forward with the entire site. And later on, you can try and amend it to pull that parcel out. Or you can do a 2-lot subdivision now and pull out. They elected option 2. We did not force them down that route. They chose that option. Now, that is a pretty quick process, a 2-lot subdivision. For whatever reason, it took them a long time to get through it. So we did not force them down a process there. The second thing is regarding the traffic study. They did mention this provision. The first time that provision ever came up, I believe, was Friday. And it's kind of like an after-the-fact position they're trying to take in that case. But for them to be able to say, we're going to just make whatever improvements are required by the highway department, they would need to have a scoping meeting with the highway department, first of all, to find out what area a traffic study would even look at. And then they would need to propose what those improvements are going to be. And then the highway department would accept those, and then no traffic study would be required. And Joey can speak more to those specific requirements. That none of that ever took place with this project. The drainage study. For the 2-lot subdivision, because there are no improvements, you can submit a 1-paragraph drainage study saying, hey, we're not actually improving it at this point, it's just a 2-lot, and that's what was submitted, 1-paragraph drainage narrative. A drainage study for an apartment complex is not going to be 1 paragraph. When we look at a complete application, we check 2 things. First of all, did they submit a document called a drainage narrative? And then we open up the document to see if it actually is a drainage narrative for the project. And we use the illustration with the team. Someone can't just upload a picture of their dog as a drainage narrative and it count as the drainage narrative. And we have that happen sometimes. And what they submitted was a 1-paragraph statement about the drainage of that site, which is not a drainage narrative for that apartment complex. It's not, well, I'm not going to say anything more there, but it's just, it was not a drainage narrative for the apartment complex that satisfied the requirements of the subdivision regulations. We talked to the judge of probate about the election notice things. I believe the judge of probate is maybe still here. I saw him earlier. And I know he's happy to speak on that. He feels comfortable that this was noticed properly. It's often done this way because of the way all these papers are owned by that one newspaper entity in the county and just their advertising schedule. I was writing everything down. I might have missed the last. Regarding the compatibility for HDR in this corner, unfortunately, zoning does not look at, hey, what will make a profit? If you ask yourself what will make a profit, well, you could throw things all over the place. Zoning asks yourself, is this compatible with the surrounding land uses? In fact, some people mistakenly use the appraisal rule of best and highest use in zoning, and that's actually not appropriate for zoning because there are a lot of best and highest uses economically. But the question with zoning is compatibility. Is this compatible for this area? And when you look at the surrounding rural properties, the advisory committee felt it wasn't. The planning commission agreed with them. That's not to say it won't be sometime in the future. It's just not now. I think I covered all their points there.
Well, he mentioned a couple of things about some legal terminology about vested interest and the amount that they've put into it already. Somehow or another, I just took it as like kind of grandfathered them into not worrying about the moratorium, not worrying about this, and all that kind of good stuff.
So that is a great question, and certainly I'm going to defer to legal counsel, but I'll comment real briefly on this. Our understanding from the applicant was that a large part of their delay was due to their own effort to pursue HUD funding for this project. And not that there's anything wrong with that or anything like that, but that a lot of this delay was on themselves. We bent over backwards, even though we weren't required, and gave them courtesy notice same day they submitted that application, so that way they could get a complete application, and that this is a very uniform and systematic process in our department. Otherwise, you have the situation where someone submits an application on a napkin and then claims grandfather status. So only a complete application. We deal with this every single month with our planning commission meetings. If you don't have a complete application by the deadline under the same criteria, you don't get on the planning commission meeting. It has to be complete before we'll accept your payment and before we'll start reviewing your project.
Brad, did you have anything you wanted to add to this as referencing what an attorney said to us?
Matthew's correct. I mean, that's how we view the vested rights. I mean, if you get your application fully completed before a deadline or before a rule change, then you do have vested rights under the law. But in this circumstance, it appears that the application was incomplete, and so I wouldn't see it as them having vested rights at this time. I mean, a judge could see differently, but that's not how I see it.
I have a further question about the traffic study. I think that's something that particular intersection has brought a lot of concerns over the last 4 years for me in particular. Even before I was elected, I had people coming to me asking about what are you going to do about 104 and Higby Road at the time. And there was improvements made by the county to pave Higby from St. Michael's School all the way to 104 to help relieve some of the congestion at that intersection. So I find it interesting that we get to the point and there was no traffic study. Did you say no traffic study was even, no scoping agreement was done with so the county engineer is here. Was there anything submitted to the highway department at all? Joey?
To my knowledge, there was no scoping meeting. There was no traffic study submitted to the county. The county gave no waivers on any improvements needed at this intersection.
Would there ever be a time that you would think of that there would never be a need for a traffic study for an HDR?
I can't think of it.
Okay. So we kind of have been focused here just on request number 2 for this whole entire time. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on request number 2? All right, so I guess we need to go back to, did y'all have any requests on, I say requests, y'all have any questions on that number 1? Okay, so y'all got to keep these, commissioners, we're going to have to keep them in mind because when I close the public hearing,
Can we start at the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yes, sir. We'll do 5. We'll do 5 separate votes. We'll do 5 separate votes, and then the 6th vote would be for the overall amendment. So you just got to keep these separate in your minds. I mean, this is
all right, we got it.
A lot of votings. So let's go to request. Yes, sir.
That's fine. You're going there.
So go ahead. Who's this?
I have another request, Bill Mitchell and Dale Cordy.
So which one are we skipping to talking about now? Is this number 5?
I believe this is number 3, sir.
Number 3, okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dale Cordy. I'm here representing my mother, Barbara Cordy, that she owns this property. And we've been working on this for quite some time with the cities and the county on a comprehensive plan and this project. She's going to be involved in this project with other people in Baldwin County. This is we were requesting high definition HDR. We know that we got one opposition, but we would like to hear if you have any questions on this. We were not aware of this HDR until recently, and we're here to request it, please. Any questions? I'll try to answer if I can. I can probably get them for you.
You got any questions for Mr. Cordy?
It's already some HDR connecting to this with a road that we've done, that people involved in this have done a traffic study, and we've got worked with the city with sewer and water and done quite a bit of work on this project already.
Mr. Chairman, could we or do we know the neighbor to the west I think it's a lady, is she involved in the group, or at what extent does she have involved?
She is not involved in this, no, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Y'all have any other questions for Mr. Cordy? Billy Joe?
I think I had all my questions answered Friday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Do y'all have any more questions? Anybody else wishing to speak on this request number 3? Ron, we got any more people sign up for any of these things?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners, do y'all have any more questions or comments on the remaining requests left out there in the open? I guess that'd be 4 and 5. Matthew, if you would
Which ones are 4 and 5?
come back.
I got 1, 2, and 3 straight.
Was there 5, Matthew? Matthew, we just come back up to the podium. Just 4 is. Let's go through this one more time.
I'm going to get a taller podium for
Let's talk about this. Just brief us on. So that's what I was telling you. Brief us on request 1 more time.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just come on.
Is 4 Mr. Johnson's?
Yeah, 5 may be Mr. Johnson's.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, do you want to go ahead and close the public hearing if nobody else has signed up to speak?
Okay. Got one more sign up to speak. Just give me just a second, and after he gets done, we're just going to refresh our memory on all of this. Is the first time we've ever done this, so just bear with us because when these new things come into fruition and people vote in the zoning, it does cause a little confusion. So,
all right, yes, sir. Request number 1 was that engineers, the residential structure that's being used as an engineer's office, and they're requesting B2. And the request number 2 is the high-density residential on St. Michael Way that we just discussed.
Request number 1, I want your feeling on that.
Sure. So I'm sorry about that. Clicking too quickly here. So request number 1 is on Gayfer Road. There are a lot of residences there that have been converted to office structures over time, and we feel that the advisory committee probably would have supported this B2 designation had it come in before them.
So is it already, what is it now?
It's currently a home that's being used. It's currently being used as a B2, as an engineering office.
So this one, would to bring it up to what their current use would be. So it says unzoned, they were a business, they didn't have to have a zoning designation. This would, because with this new thing that we vote on today, would make that a non-conforming use.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct.
What's right next to them? That's Fairhope on the right side, just by chance. Any idea? It's okay. Never mind.
I mean, that's been there for.
I know.
I don't even know.
I thought you might just know. You know a lot.
What is? Do you know?
Look, don't waste any time. Move on.
There are some apartments on Bishop Road, some small apartments on Bishop Road there, and then you have townhouses to the west. And on Gayfer Road, just to the north there, you have some law offices. You have, I think, a hair salon. You have a daycare, all in that vicinity.
Okay.
It's complicated, in my opinion. I'm sure I'm not the only one with this opinion, just because you've got so much of jagged city limits and county and all this stuff going on. So, okay.
Let me ask you this, Matthew. If for some reason that zoning didn't pass, if we didn't do that today, would they have to shut down their business?
No.
They wouldn't. They would be a grandfathered under that zoning. But generally, in the advisory committee process, if someone came in and said, here's a photo of what's going on right here, and I checked out their website to confirm.
So in talking to the advisory committee about this, are you confident that they would support this? Because my concern is we have storms, we have hurricanes, we have some. If that house is blown down, their business is gone. They can't rebuild the business. Correct.
That's right.
If you approve it as an RSF1.
That's right. If we approve it as a residential. So I think the advisory committee, if someone came in and said, we actually have an active business right here, as a general rule, they would support the business that was the zoning category that was appropriate.
And nothing would prevent them, even if it wasn't approved as a business, to request rezoning in the future. So it's never a done deal. It's just and this appears to be a compatible request.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, so let's go, let me let this lady speak real quick for a second.
She was one of the 10 that has been dealing with
There's
this.
another one. Just come up, just state your name and.
I'm Elizabeth Wilson. I was the chairman of the advisory committee, and I feel like our advisory committee would approve this request one. With the B2s, we were very lenient. Like you said, if a storm comes, we want them to be able to rebuild. I just wanted to reiterate the HDR. Our district was very passionate about not wanting or greatly limiting the scope of apartments. We feel like we did make a pretty big compromise by allowing some of the level 6s within the zones. But when we went door to door, people were passionate against HDR, and that's why we said no. So I know the one by Publix, if they wanted to do like a 6, that would be allowed there, within that 500 foot. But as far as the HDR, that was the reason we won in such a landslide victory, was because people do not want the high density apartments overtaking District 37.
How would I'm going to just put you on the spot here because it will help us out. How does the advisory committee feel about 4 and 5, these other little requests coming in? Matthew, come up, help. Just stand by. We got the advisory committee member here. I just want to hear her take on 4 and 5. If there is a 4 and 5. Commissioner Underwood, his question made me start thinking about if there's even a 4 or a 5.
Well, one's Mr. Johnson's. He was here yesterday. Is he 4 or is he 5?
So this is number 4. Mr. Johnson's number 4.
Okay.
And that was the request for RSF2 next to the Fairhope Falls development.
Yeah.
Is there a 5?
Yeah, I would say we would, since it's RSF2, there's no restrictions on RSF2. We would just hope that our provisions protect the river. But I think we've written some stuff in there to protect him developing the river. But Rebecca, we would do a 2 probably. We'd probably allow that. It's next to a 3. I think we would support that.
Is there a number 5, Matthew?
So number 5 is the email that came in at midnight last night. That he's not requesting any specific designation, but he did get something in the door, and I wasn't sure if he would have an agent show up today. So, what I told him is that he's probably going to have to go through the zoning process because I don't know enough about what his project is or anything.
What is it? Okay, so
really, there ain't a 5.
There's not a project.
It's 1 through 4.
There is, but there's not.
Oh, that's right. We don't have it numbered on here. I threw it on here last
completely.
minute this morning, and I apologize.
What was
We
your
don't
name
have to consider
Elizabeth
5.
Wilson.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much
Yeah, I
for
just
your
want to
input.
just that HDR, that's why we were here, is because we didn't want it. We don't have a problem with apartments if there's 6 units or less per acre or so on and so forth, but we feel very strongly and passionate about the nodes that we made, and that's where the development needs to be.
Thank y'all for all your work you did.
Thank you.
Got one more. Who's next?
Mr. Robbie Robertson.
Okay.
I'm Robbie Robertson, and my wife and Nancy and I, live at 21379 Shady Grove Lane, and we had put in a request to have our property, which is now RSFE, rezoned to RA, and we're told it would be on the agenda today, and I didn't know if it might be an oversight.
Hang on just a second. Matthew?
There may be a 5 after all.
Might be a 5 or a 6.
Do you mind giving your dongle to Buford? And Buford, could you pull up that address on the parcel viewer?
That's the PIN, if that helps.
Mr. Robinson, if you can give me about 30 seconds, and if I could have your address again, please.
21379 Shady Grove Lane.
Okay, sir, and I'm probably going to ask you for that again in just a second.
And Mr. Robertson, can you tell us the acreage? Does he have a 10 acre? So Mr. Robertson's requesting a 10-acre horse farm that's zoned RSFE, where it's his residential single-family estate. It does allow agricultural uses, be zoned RA we certainly wouldn't have any opposition to someone requesting that.
Because it's more than 3 acres undeveloped.
That's right.
So would this be fair to say this is request 6?
We call it
Technically, yes.
When we're adding a request, so I just want to make sure. And this is actually a down zoning, correct?
I don't know.
I mean, is this a down zoning from?
This would be a down zoning from what's proposed.
So you're going to what everybody else doesn't want. All right. So congratulations, Mr. Robbins. We still got some farmers left in the world.
I apologize, Commissioners, about that.
Those are easy peasy right there. All right. Commissions, are we ready?
I am.
All right, so I did close the public hearing, correct? I didn't close the public. Ron, do you still got somebody wanting to speak?
No, sir.
You get to pound that gavel if you want.
It ain't gonna hurt to close it again.
I'm seeing what they're doing. Y'all still doing anything, Matthew?
No, we're good.
You got Buford all dressed
I can't
up.
wait to go back and watch this meeting. All right, this thing is closed. That public hearing. Probably the longest one in the history of our 4 years. Joe, I don't know what kind of omen you're bringing on us over here. All right, so Commissioners, we have got 6 requests. All right, we will take them one at a time through our direction of our planning director here. We're going to go to request number 1, which was the B2 zoning for that business on the house that's a business.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the applicant or the landowner's request to bring this in as B2 rather than RSF1.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Underwood.
Second.
You got a second by Commissioner Gruber to approve the B2 request.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, what is the staff recommendation from your group, Matthew?
Staff would have recommended approval on this one.
Okay, just want that for the record. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on request number 1? All right. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Number 1 is approved. Request number 2. This was the one the gentleman presented the picture here of the apartments. Commissioners, y'all remember the conversation we had on this, Matthew's explanations of this. Y'all have a motion on this one.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we deny this request.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Underwood, a second by Commissioner Gruber to deny this request. Any discussion or any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that particular intersection, the future connectivity of 181, 104, St. Michael's Way, there's a whole series of documents that the Highway Department's put together at the direction of Mr. Cooper, the ALDOT director, that would, to me, make that particular site available or more available for high density once those connections are made. Because of that, I would think that we should approve this, but I realize that I may be on the short side, but things are going to change a lot on 181, 104, St. Michael's, the number of roads, intersections, and growth. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
And Matthew, I'm going to ask a question as well. On something like this, if this approval and request is denied today, what would be the applicant's options in the future if all of these interchanges, everything's done, and their time frame, they can come back and do this, some type of similar process if traffic studies are shown and done? Because I'm kind of in a limbo here because they didn't. You're telling me they didn't do what they were supposed to, and I believe you. They're telling me they did everything you're supposed to. I don't know these guys, so just tell me what their process would be if this is denied?
Sure. So zoning ordinances are meant to evolve over time. So if this area continues to develop out of kind of the node at 104 and 181, as that intensity increases away from the node, at some point it could become appropriate to amend the zoning ordinance and expand where those high-density residential may be allowed, because currently it's not allowed in District 37, or RMF 6 allowed. And so that would take place, and then that may make this more rural-type property available for something like high-density residential down the road.
And that process would go back through the advisory committee and your office, and
it would come to our office, Planning Commission, and County Commission.
Okay.
After today, the advisory committee will not exist.
I see what you're saying.
And also, just to comment on that, as far as this is not a denial of a rezoning request where that you have to wait 12 months before you can resubmit. This is the initial zoning of this map, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if they wanted to submit an application next week.
That's correct.
Trying to get in before things change.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, one more question, Matthew. Neighboring property along there, have you had any requests for research to do high density or others? Because I can see a lot of that happening, and I would hate for this group to fall behind merely because they maybe anticipated something before everybody else.
Sure. We do know that there are a number of requests for high-density residential, either just inside the Fairhope city limits to the west, that have already been approved and are being developed. The county has one, Rockwell, that we mentioned briefly earlier, that is 152 units here. I think what we want to avoid, we saw this with the Swift case, is kind of these ghost rezonings taking place, and then they kind of haunt us down the road because they sit there and then they don't get developed for some reason, and then they create a development pattern in that area. So that's one reason why we as staff are really cautious about changing a rezoning when it's surrounded by rural properties. So that's kind of our perspective on this. In time, we would expect the area to intensify that direction.
One other point, and if you could get with Joey and let him show you what that intersection and what the east of 181 and 104 is going to look like, because there will be substantial opportunity for growth because people need to be able to move around. And I've seen the maps. I don't know who owns the property, but I can guarantee you this group maybe just got ahead of some others, but there's going to be roads. I mean, if you look at all the pipe that's out there across from the new Walmart store and the hospital, I mean, there's a whole series of roads and intersections that need to be done in anticipation of the growth that's going to happen. So if you could get with Joey, that would keep you abreast and your committee people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to make one comment and kind of remind Commissioner Davis will remember this very well, because we've had a lot of things told to us, futuristic projects by ALDOT, which is great to have. Living here my whole life for 50 years, one of the futuristic projects we had was 4-lane and 181. It was Old County Road 27 is what we used to call it. That still ain't been done. And that was many, many years ago. 4-lane and 31 all the way from Spanish Fort to Stapleton, Alabama, was always a vision of ALDOT to move traffic rapidly. The same type of situation that's happening on 31 with subdivisions being built there, and you're not getting out on 31 anymore going places. So I get if there's going to be futuristic plans for ALDOT to improve that area, but I just don't foresee it realistically anytime in my lifetime. So that's just my speculation, because it's been 50 years on this other stuff. So I don't know if I've got another 50 years to wait around on these projects. So that's just my 2 cents in on that, and I'm just throwing it in there because I know ALDOT is good with their word, and they're starting on 27, 181, so one of these days that will be finished and will alleviate some of this tension. But there's a lot of problems on our infrastructure here. And Joey, do you know something about, can you come and tell us when ALDOT's plans to improve this intersection is going to take place?
Good Lord.
I can't give you a timeline on it. All I can tell you is that Director Cooper and I and the Southwest Region engineer have been communicating with all the growth and development and intersection improvements that are needed. I'm proposing to actually connect Lawrence Road in this year's budget that I talked with y'all about the other day at Road and Bridge. So we're doing some improvements there, but to give a timeline on what AlDOT's, I can't do that.
All right, maybe it's within their 50-year window or something. So. All right, Commissioners, so we have a motion by Commissioner Underwood to deny this request and a second by Commissioner Gruber. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
So motion passes 3-1. Request number 3. Y'all refresh us on this one.
Yes, sir. Request number 3 was a proposal for high-density residential behind the new Publix on 104 and 181.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we agree with the request for planning for zoning, request number 3, bringing the parcel 05.46020300004441 as high-density residential property.
I'll second that if that's a motion to do case Z22-9. Is that what that?
No, we're making a motion. We're making a motion on the apartment complex behind Publix.
Yes, on Publix.
Okay, that's not the case?
Z22-9 will be the Tola case, I believe, immediately after this one.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and we need a second to deal with that. I'll second that.
So the motion is to approve the request for HDR,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Do y'all have any comments? You want to reference?
I'll stay for, if you're looking any place that would fit, it would be, this would be the area that it would fit in. I mean, you could run your groups, like big complexes and, the hospitals and all this stuff. It fits in with that part of it. I mean, in the overall scheme of, if you was doing it and you weren't just trying to not have it, I mean, that would be an ideal place for it.
Well,
my opinion, that's just my opinion. So.
Exactly, it's an opinion. And there's really no check the box on a rezoning, as you have stated many times. And as we heard from the advisory committee lady, Ms. Wilson, I remember that because that's my maiden name. We're not related, though, I don't believe. You guys are very passionate about what you want for your community and how you want your community to develop. And it's not that there was an opposition to apartments, it was an opposition to the intensity of this density. HDR is 12 units per acre versus HD6 is what you were willing to live with. So there has to be some kind of a transition between, Publix is in Fairhope, but that would be the equivalency of a B4, which is the most intense business there. Your circles, yeah, they mean a lot, but you know what? We got a lot of jagged city in there that complicates things. You've got very high-end residential developments near there. Yes, there is an HDR across the street that came in prior to that. That probably would not have been what the advisory committee wanted, but they were, as the word says, vested because their application was already complete and in there. So I think that we do need to take into consideration. And I take offense to people telling me that I get swayed by a room full of people like this. I am absolutely not. I have spent my life on planning commissions and had to deal with hate, everything you can imagine. So no, I'm not swayed by a room full of people who just don't want anybody else to move into Baldwin County. So I just wanted to make that statement there, because it's hard being in these positions up here. It ain't easy. And I have dreaded this day, but it will pass. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, and Matthew, I think you'll back me on this, that when you have a clean slate, then you could have a PUD develop and be planned and be organized and be systematic. In effect, a PUD has developed here, not as a PUD, but it's got the components that make up a PUD. And high-density apartments become part of that. It's a logical place for workers nearby to live, short-term and long-term. So I think this is an appropriate use for this property.
Okay. Is that all the comments? All right, Commissioners, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Gruber to approve this request, and a second by Commissioner Davis to approve this request. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. All right, request 4.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. The next one is a request for RSF 2 on the property just to the east of Fairhope Falls.
This is Mr. Johnson.
That's correct.
All right, Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we approve the request number 4, bringing in portions of parcel number 05-47-03-08000-006.000 within District 37 as residential single family 2, which is RSF2.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Gruber, second by Commissioner Davis to approve request 4. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, request 5 should be easy. Commissioners, this was a request that had no plans.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we deny this request.
All right, we got a motion to deny.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gruber to deny request number 5. All those in favor signify by, or is there any discussion on request 5?
Yes, how did this get to us? This is about as incomplete as you could imagine.
So it arrived a minute before midnight last night.
Yeah, it was at 7. Yeah, we got it.
I responded at 7 this morning, but he sent it at 11:59 p.m. last night.
We're asleep now. All right.
Well, I just don't understand how you can short circuit and be pushed to this point by getting 1 minute ahead of the date change. Because most of this process, as all of us know, takes time, takes deliberation, takes submittal of information. And for somebody to send you a note, I mean, I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning about a mailbox, but, you know, I called her back the next night at 2 o'clock to see. She couldn't understand why I woke her up. But, hey, I thought maybe she worked a graveyard shift at Quincy's or something. I didn't know. So this shouldn't, to me, somebody sending a letter this close, to me, that disrespects the process, that you need to submit things, and this should be considered at the next set of meetings, in my opinion. That's just my thought.
Well, I would have to say that I don't exactly agree with that comment, because you have a public hearing process, and had this person not had COVID, they may have been here, and that's the opportunity to make requests and changes, but that's my opinion.
But this is not the last public hearing you'll have. There'll be others. And to be able to jump in a minute before, that's silly.
So we do have a motion and a second to deny this one. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, number 6.
And as a reminder, I don't have this on the screen. It was a request to go from RSFE to RA, rural agricultural. That's actually a down zone request.
Commissioners, we're building a horse farm. Okay,
That's right.
already this one.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve that request.
Yes, sir.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second for Mr. Robinson's request. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now, Commissioners, let's go back to number 1 up here on your screen, and y'all will need to make a motion to approve that.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend the approval of District 37 Advisory Committee map presented to the Baldwin County Commission.
I'll second that.
And I apologize, I didn't word this, but that includes the adoption of the resolution associated with this item.
Yes, including the, that we did.
All right.
All right, I still second.
So we've got a motion by Commissioner Gruber, second by Commissioner Davis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I would like to just take this time to just thank Matthew, staff, all these committees that are involved in all this. I mean, this is something that we're looking down the pipe in the future for many more zonings to be taking place. And when people decide that that's what they want to do. And Matthew, thank y'all for all your hard work. Buford, thank y'all. Joey, whoever else is involved in all this, just thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to specifically thank the 4 that are here that stood earlier, and I encourage every one of the rest of you to get involved in things that you care about and serve on some of the committees, because we need as much information as we can have, as does the staff. So part of what makes this a great place is that our citizens are involved in making the decisions, and I think it's important, and thank you for not only your being on that committee, but being here today. Thanks, Matthew.
And Matthew, just for the record, if y'all don't mind, Commissioners, before we get into the next public hearing, I'd like to take 10-minute recess.
Please.
All right.
All right.
Recess for 10 minutes. Call back to order at approximately 10:35. Next up, we have our case Z22/9, the Tola Properties LLC property request for rezoning. Matthew?
All right, thank you, Commissioners. This is a request to rezone 44.4 acres that is currently RSF2 and RSFE to RSF3. I'm going to start with some introductory slides just to kind of remind everybody what this is, and then we will go from there. First of all, I'm going to talk about the difference between the zoning review and the subdivision review. And it's interesting, these citizens saw a very unique process in the prior two cases. We're going through a rezoning process with this case. What you all saw was the birth of a zoning district, which is very rare, and it's going to be a lot different than what you see right here, because now this is in an established district, and so it's an actual rezoning case. So I want to talk about the difference between a zoning review and a subdivision review, because what's pending before us is a zoning application. If this zoning is approved, the next step would be a subdivision application for this particular project. So the difference between the two, the focus on rezoning or zoning is a transition from less intense uses to more intense uses. The key word is compatibility. It's a little bit more of a subjective review with the county/planning commission given broad discretion. The review is like a balancing test. I think of what the Supreme Court does. They weigh different factors and things like that, and then they come with a conclusion. And sometimes it's not unanimous, as we often see from the court system. So I think of analyzing this like a lawyer or a judge with these rezoning cases. So I want to contrast this with a subdivision case, because that would be the next step in this if a subdivision or if the rezoning was approved. So the focus on a subdivision case is the actual dividing up of the land into multiple lots or units without regulating the actual use or lot on the lot or the unit. The underlying zoning would end up regulating that. So the key words with a subdivision are technical compliance. And with a subdivision review, we really dive into the technical requirements of a subdivision. There's a drainage study, there's a traffic study, there is a wetland delineation. We check fire flows. We give the local fire chief an opportunity to comment. There's a very detailed technical process for the subdivision review. However, it's also a much more objective review, with the county/planning commission given little discretion. The Supreme Court has essentially said if the developer checks all the boxes on a subdivision, then the county or planning commission or the planning commission must approve. So the review is more like a checklist with a subdivision, and we analyze it more like an engineer. So I want to talk about staff's role in this process, and I just threw up these pictures to help everybody understand. Staff is like a referee, and we all know that no one wants to be the referee. Sometimes we get frustrated with the referee. But the referee is very important to the game proceeding in the appropriate manner. And then you have the recall booth, and the county commission and the planning commission is like the recall booth. And sometimes the county commission and the planning commission will go the other way of staff. Sometimes they'll support what the ref saw on the ground. But it's a critical element in this game. And I know we're talking about land, it's not a game, but this is a good way to see what our roles is. And so just keep that in mind as we go through
Matthew, do you have some place where we can go and stand behind the curtain?
We'll have to work on that. Brian.
We need an exit strategy on this one.
Thank you. I did need to smile. So
All right, so here's some overview items for this rezoning. I've highlighted kind of the most pertinent stuff. This is coming directly from our staff report, so all this was available online. So this property is currently zoned RSFE. It's single-family estate district and RSF2 single-family district. We'll talk about those densities here in a second. Again, the proposing RSF3, and the purpose is to develop a single-family residential development, but we're not approving that subdivision today. That would come in a later application. Here's a locator map and a site map. I just point out here, we're going to look at the proximity stuff more, but there are a lot of wetlands on the site, so again, or potential wetlands, so there'll be delineations required and everything to check those factors. I just wanted to give a really broad overview map. We're going to come back to this in a moment, but you can kind of zoom out and you can see there's kind of this circle of rule off in the distance, and then you can see some of the varying densities as you approach that intersection of 64 and 181. Now, This picture represents where the sign was placed at the end of the road that's on Waterford Subdivision. And I zoomed this photo up for today's presentation because I do think it captures why there is understandably a lot of passion from the community about this development. And we respect that, and we appreciate folks coming out and participating in the public hearing because this is a beautiful view of farm fields. This is anecdotal, and I debated whether or not to say it, but I'm going to. The first home my wife and I purchased on the Eastern Shore, our front door viewed across the road to a farm field that looked just like this, and we loved it. But within a year, Subdivision had broken ground, and certainly we were disappointed about the change, but we did understand that when we moved into a subdivision that once was a farm field, that there was a decent chance that the adjacent farm field would become a subdivision at some point in time. But we empathize with these property owners. We understand why this feels like a large change or proposal to them. So residential districts, the current, again, RSFE and RSF2. So in RSFE, the density allowed is 0.5 units per acre, or an 80,000 square foot minimum lot size. In RSF2, the density is 15,000 square feet. That's the minimum lot size. Density of 2.9 units per acre. So that's how many units per acre you could do under the existing RSF2, and that's a minimum lot width of 80 feet in RSF2. So what they're proposing is RSF3, which allows a minimum lot area of 10,000 square feet. Again, still 80-foot lot width, but a density of 4.4 units per acre. And I think that is the reason some folks feel concerned, because they feel like that's a substantial increase in the density. So here's the development that's being proposed. Now, I do want to note this. This is what the developer has given to us, so you can ask him questions about that when he comes up. But they're proposing lots that are 80 by 140 feet, which would be 11,200 square feet. But because of the wetlands and the water features on the site, their resulting density that they're proposing would end up being 1.9 units per acre, which is less than the RSF2 zoning, so or would be allowed in that RSF2. However, they cannot meet the minimum lot sizes of RSF2. So their proposed density, at least right now, is proposing to stay in that RSF2 range with just smaller lots clustered together. Now, staff does note this, because staff, we made a recommendation and we stick with our recommendation in today's meeting, and you'll see, we'll explain why we came to that conclusion. If we had one beef with the developer, it would probably be this right here. We do have a process in our zoning ordinance where a developer can pursue smaller lot sizes under RSF2 zoning through the planned residential development process. And they could have pursued that here and accomplished what they were trying to accomplish under RSF2 zoning. We do think RSF3 is warranted on its face, so we didn't have a problem with them requesting that. They kind of took the shortcut path, you might say. But they could have accomplished this with RSF2 and the clustered lots. So now we go through an analysis. There are 11 factors that we look at for a rezoning. Again, these are subjective factors, so we kind of weigh the facts. The first one is the requested change compatible with the existing development pattern and the zoning of nearby properties. So a lot of the adjacent uses are residential and agriculture. However, we do believe, or staff felt, that there was a development trend appeared to exist from an intensified commercial node at the intersection of 181 and County Road 64. Because zoning encourages a transition from more intense uses to less intense uses, a higher intensity residential use is likely an appropriate transition from the commercial growth at that intersection. That said, staff did note that the commercial development trend may be somewhat misrepresented by the intensely zoned but still undeveloped commercial property in the area. So here's a map illustrating that. You see the subject parcel in blue. You see all the red, which is B3. That's a pretty intense commercial use at 181 and 64. You see some B4 there as well. And then you see a transition away from that into these residential neighborhoods that make up Bell Forest. I show the aerial because a lot of that B3 is still undeveloped to this day, though we do have applications periodically coming in the door. So again, looking at that development trend, just explaining how staff came to its conclusion, when we look at that zoning transition, you see the more intense commercial use at that intersection, and then what we expect to see is transitions out from that point from more intense uses to less intense uses. And when we kind of visualize that in our minds, we felt that this RSF3 kind of fit in that donut of where we thought an RSF3 might fit. Now, just by contrast, I'm going to show you, just see the parcel I brought up in blue on the far right of the screen. We had someone contact us a couple weeks ago, just an informal phone call saying, we want your opinion, we want to zone this RSF4. That blue parcel there. What do y'all think about that? You think that's something that could go forward? And first of all, we always encourage them to go to a pre-app meeting. They have to go to one to go to the next step. But we said, listen, that is surrounded by rural property. It is well outside that transition, which is why we came to our decision. And so we said we would not support that type of zoning there. So you can see that contrast as you get further away when you're in those rural areas. Now, we also analyzed the lot sizes, focusing exclusively, not necessarily intentionally, but on the Belforce existing developments there. And you can see that they are proposing a smaller lot size than all the surrounding ones in terms of kind of what the average small lot size was for the surrounding developments, with the exception of Cotton Ridge Estates. Now, Jubilee Farms does have a number of smaller lots that's in the Daphne city limits. They have a variety of lots in there, and didn't end up having the time to go look at all that variety of lot sizes. So that was factor number one. We felt like that ultimately weighed in favor of the applicant. Factor number two, has there been a change in the conditions since the original zoning? So here we looked at the aerial photography from when zoning came into being in around 2005, I think is when it was voted in. And then 2021, there has been substantial residential development in the area in that time frame. Does the proposed zoning conform with the master plan? Here, the master plan is more or less neutral. It says it's currently residential, so its future use is residential. Will the proposed change conflict with existing or planned public improvements? There is efforts on County Road 64 to widen that. Of course, this isn't proposing to access County Road 64. I'm going to discuss this a little bit more in the traffic item. We do have some concerns about Rebel Road, and the citizens have very importantly highlighted those concerns. And so I'm going to go to number 5 about the traffic patterns. Rebel Road is a local road. I drove down the road yesterday just as I looked through the community, and you're just reminded how local it is when you drive down it. The applicant did do a voluntary traffic study, and I want to highlight this is voluntary. We did not require it of them. We don't know if it meets the requirements of our subdivision regulations. They did note on here that there were no improvements required. I've asked them some follow-up questions, but again, because this is voluntary at this stage, they would be required to do a full traffic study that meets our requirements if this goes to the subdivision phase. And I talked to the county engineer yesterday, and he confirmed that we would make sure that accounted for that school traffic as well. So they did this preliminary study, and we have had that loaded up on the website for anybody to view if they wanted to. Is the proposed amendment consistent with the development patterns? One thing we noted here is that District 15 has a very subjective local provision about development that above RSF1 that impacts the value of homes. And at this point, we don't feel like there's any substantive evidence that we can use to apply that local provision, especially in light of the fact that many RSF1 developments or RSF2 developments have already occurred since this provision came into being in this area. Is the proposed amendment a logical expansion of the adjacent zoning districts? We already discussed this in many respects, but staff concluded based on the different transitions and trends that it likely was. The rest of these are pretty overview issues, and they're in the staff report. I'll skip them unless someone has a question. Again, this would have to go through the subdivision process. We sent comments to the various cities and municipalities, and we got, you can see what those responses were there. Again, Baldwin County gave some input on Rebel Road, and we would look very closely at this road during the subdivision process. If they propose to access to it, we would check whether or not the geometric requirements of the road are correct for the type of travel that they're proposing to put on there. And any improvements would be required that would be necessitated by this additional impact to that roadway. So again, the request is to go from RSF2 and RSFE to RSF3. This is the summary. It summarizes everything we already said. Staff's recommendation was approval for the reasons we stated. The Planning Commission did deny based primarily on traffic concerns. And so there's the referees on the field, and at this time, we turn this over to the County Commission.
Do y'all have any questions for Matthew? All right, public hearing is now open on Z22/9 Bertola Properties LLC property. Ron?
Miss Heather Smith is.
I did talk with the group earlier today, and they agreed to have a spokesman for this whole project. As I went back through and I watched, I know this sounds boring, but I wanted to do my homework, and I did watch this planning commission meeting twice in the last 2 days, and just to keep it fresh on my mind. And they had a lot of spokesmen at that meeting that said the exact same thing. So I'm going to allow her to give her presentation and her feelings towards this project. And if there is anybody else from the group that, if she missed something, you would be more than welcome to come up and just we don't want repetitiveness of what she has presented, but if there's something that she missed that is on your heart, this is a public hearing. You're going to have the opportunity to speak, okay?
I'm Heather Smith. I live at 11082 Cortland Court in Bell Forest. And I'd like to start out, if we could put the screen back up where he had the donut that he was showing. Can we put that back up? I went through basically with the same exact PowerPoint he just showed, so those 11 things are the same things I'd like to address. When we talk about compatibility with the existing development and pattern of the zone, I'd like to point out that when you're looking at that intersection there at 181 and 64, and you're talking about going from a higher density to a lower density, within those circles, between the property that we're talking about zoning here and the intersection there, you have a few commercial properties zoned there, but you're talking about established homes that are between this property and there. These homes are established estate homes. These homes aren't going to be converted unless you're planning on taking our properties to these higher density areas. There's a buffer zone there of these people who have moved here, they're retiring here. I have gone door to door and talked to the surrounding area. These people aren't moving. They're not selling, they're not changing, they don't want their property taken and rezoned. So when you're looking at the area we're talking about rezoning, and you're talking about how we're going to move from commercial and take this property, and this is a transition, between this property and the commercial are these people's homes. So we can't call this a transition when there are estate homes on large lots that lie between this property and those commercial properties. Now, we have had commercial properties that have been approved, and we have, and those have all been well-intentioned, well-planned out properties that have been zoned for commercial use that are all servicing needs of our community. There's been a gas station put in, which was a great, as far as, y'all know the traffic situation. We've talked about that. There's, that one gas station has become a lifeline to that whole area there. There's a lot of people, that was one area that we could not cross the 4-lane highway to have to go get gas. It was an area that is serviced as well. There's, a small nutrition store there that, you can stop in the morning and get you a drink. So there's a lot of well-intentioned commercial business there. The commercial stuff that's there is not huge development commercial property. It's small businesses, it's a gym, it's things that service our community. So when we talk about the commercial that's there, it is well-intentioned services for our community. So this does not appear to be a great transition type property. There are bordering and I have to look at these as two separate pieces because they are two different zonings. The RSFE property is surrounded by, its approximate perimeter is 3,600 feet. Agriculture borders 35% of those linear feet. RSFE borders, these are established residents, borders 46% of that property. And RSF2 borders 15% of that property, which is the property we're already talking about adjoining with it, and 4% of his road frontage on River Road. So the majority of that property is established resident homes. When now the RSF2 part that we're looking at is a 35.5 acre property with approximately a perimeter of 5,875 feet. 38% of that perimeter is bordered by agriculture, and an RSFE home is established on that, but I kind of left it as agriculture because it's just one home on a very large agriculture plot. RSFE residents are 50% that border that. So the state is 50% of its borders. Only 12% are RSF2, which is the Waterford subdivision that is cut off right there. And so honestly, it is almost also surrounded by either agriculture or RSFE. So as you can tell, it's kind of in its own self stuck out there in the middle of nowhere. It was, I'm assuming from what I can tell from the zoning, an intended extension into Waterford, because Waterford literally just stops. There's no ending to the subdivision, it just stops. We are not against developing this property. We're not against that Waterford continuing. Those homes that are in there are $400,000 and $500,000 custom-built, nice homes that Truland built. Those homes are great homes. We would love to see that an extension of that type of home continued with the same size lots that are there. That are the same size lots that are in all those communities that you see surrounding it. So we are not against developing continuing that development on that property there. We're just asking that we stay continuous with what's there. Because our homes, or the homes of the people that are there, that are not going to be moving, you're running up in the middle of them. But there's nowhere to have that transition because you'd have to take over their homes to do that. And so the closest RSF3 that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner over there, that little orange area, is 2 miles away. So the closest zoning that you have that they're requesting is 2 miles away in the county. So just a couple of things that we can look at is that I work for the school system. And I know that you don't make every decision as far as zoning on that, but high intensity, when you're trying to when you're moving into the middle of that, first of all, I think it's clear what's around us. So staying consistent with what's around us, knowing that it's not a zoning issue. It's not like all that property is there for someone to develop with it. It's not like those aren't established homes there. But when we go to talk about the impacts with the traffic study didn't follow guidelines for traffic studies, so we'll address that when it comes time for a subdivision. I mean, that will have to be done properly, and that's fine. It's not an issue. I don't want us to say it doesn't impact, because that is a passionate area there. I've talked to the Alabama Department of Transportation engineers. I've been in touch with the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the area. We all know that there are major areas there. It's well known throughout every organization that's involved in this area. There are plans there, so the traffic, saying it won't impact, it just cannot be, that can't be considered in part of this at this point. But when you do increase a high intensity residential housing there, you're going to affect certain things that our county resources. So as you start to put in there, our Bell Forest Volunteer Fire Department is not far away. One of the biggest concerns that they have, and the fire chief was here, and I understand that he's not speaking based on, it's not a subdivision review, but his concern in increasing the intensity is that we don't have the resources to fight the fires that could occur at this moment. They don't, in their training sessions, they have run into pressure issues that would not fight the fires that could occur if they occur at specific hours in the day. If there's a fire, it's likely to happen either in the middle of the night or the middle of the day. In the middle of the night, it's likely that they could get the resources they need. In the middle of the day, they cannot. If you have high-intensity subdivisions that are placed closer together, or the intensity of the structures being there's more structures closer there together, then those structures, the fires can spread faster. We only have 2 fire trucks. That's all we have. If the volunteer firefighters can get to the fire station to get to those trucks. And so, those are things that we have to look at. Our Bell Forest Elementary School, I mean, they were built for a capacity of 1,200. I talked to them at 9:30 yesterday morning. They were over 1,000. They started with 800 in the fall of 2020. They're over 1,000 enrolled. She had 5 people calling for setting appointments to enroll within the first 2 hours of yesterday. I work at the high school. We added an addition, 750 capacity addition this summer that's due to open in the fall. We are going to start with over 1,700 students. Our max capacity, squishing every child we could in that building, is 2,100. So adding 750 capacity, we're already using almost all of that. We have less than 400. Our area is, I understand developing, and I understand, there are certain areas that will need higher intensity. There are certain areas that are already developed into what we have. We have estate properties that are developed. So we're just asking as a community that you look at what's there. And we did submit to you guys, we did submit to you the clarification on what was intended by our advisory committee. We had them clarify what they intended for that statement to read when they were asking for our purpose for the advisory committee. And it does say that they were asking for us to support mostly RSF-E and RSF-1 zoning so that we could protect the farm families that are in the area. They felt like there was a misconception through reading through the slides and the statements that were made by the staff on this project. And it does say that they are visiting the area, they have noticed the higher density of lots creates problems that run with the quality of life for the citizens. Traffic is an issue, which is obvious. We've talked about that. A higher concentration of houses creates issues for roads, schools, safety. Our roads are currently stressed. We also live in an area that you can't just come in and 4-lane one of our roads without taking the property of those established estate lots that belong to families. So at this point, our citizens, we've submitted over 100 signatures. I went door to door to every surrounding property yesterday that surrounds this property. Most of them are not against the development of homes in this area. They're just asking that we stay consistent with all the other homes that are within the 2-square-mile radius of the county zoning area that we have. RSF2 through the RSF-E to RSF2. But allowing the RSF3 to begin here, we are well aware that Bertula owns some adjoining property to this, not just what they've highlighted. And so by doing that, you're opening the door to allow some high intensity residential properties to kind of come right up in the middle of what is established there now. And it's established there because that's what that's the vision for this area, and that's the established expectation of your citizens.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up a little bit. Do you have anything else that you missed?
Evacuations. That was they did ask me about that. The evacuation, if we were to have an evacuation, Bell Forest citizens could not get out to follow the evacuation routes.
Evacuation for what?
Hurricane evacuations. If there is an evacuation, necessary, a mandatory evacuation for this area. The last one we had, they couldn't even tell me when the last one was, but in 2020 we had a voluntary.
Right.
There were issues already then, but the amount of development that's been put into the area, the evacuating would be a near impossibility.
Yeah, so that's something totally different. Under a mandatory evacuation, that's not going to happen overnight. So
right.
there will be days to get out of here under a mandatory evacuation with our EMA department implementing that based on what the governor decides to do. She implements that, and she's not going to do it within 24 hours of something.
I understand.
So I think that would. I get it. The whole county's going to have a problem evacuating if that was the issue. So,
Right.
but does anybody else? Did you other than evacuation? Anything else?
I just wanted to reiterate what you said earlier. It's not about what's going to make the most money.
Who said that?
Oh, that was what we talked about. It's not about what's going to make the most money.
Okay.
It's about what meets the compatibility of the area.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to ask if the commissioners, y'all have any questions? I'm going to ask if anybody else has anything that they want to add. Now, we've talked about compatibility. We've talked about traffic. We've talked about evacuation problems. We've talked about everything that you can talk about.
Sorry, when I sat down, they reminded me of flooding.
Flooding, okay, flooding. Okay, still we're on a rezoning case right now. Okay, and I just want us to maintain a focus on the rezoning aspect. Maybe the subdivision process will cause flooding. I don't know. But we're not here to talk about a subdivision today. They were nice enough to include their conceptual plan in this public hearing process. I don't even know if that's what they're going to do. So this is just merely a rezoning, and there's a huge step to go to do a subdivision, which everybody knows about. Was there anybody else that, so flooding was something that was left out, just for the public knowledge. Flooding is the concern of these, the neighboring citizens. Anybody else? Did she leave anything out that y'all want to add? Okay, who's next to speak? David, does any of the people from, there's representing Tola want to come and speak?
Good morning, Commission. David Deal with SE Civil. We've got a short presentation to just kind of go over some of these items. We did take note of the concerns of the community at the Planning Commission, so we're going to try to address some of those in the presentation. Notably, there was a concern that we would do something that's not compatible. As you'll see, we're actually building the exact same homes that are in Waterford. One thing that I keep hearing is high density, high density. By the county's own definition, RSF3 is not high density. It's a medium density, and you'll see that our density is actually very compatible. And I'm going to try to do this, and hopefully I don't mess it up. Okay. We have this site, total of 54 acres. The total number of lots proposed is 104, which gives us a density of 1.9 units per acre. The green space, open space provided is 13 acres of that, which is 24% of the total site. That's well above any open space provided in any of the adjoining neighborhoods. For example, Waterford's open space is 5%. Let's talk about the density. Well, I guess we're going to talk about traffic first. So we did hear a lot of concerns about traffic, the intersection of 54, 64, Rebel Road, Austin Road. So we've looked at some improvements that are going on in the area, whether this development goes forward or not. At 181 and 64, the county is spending a lot of money improving that. There's a new Circle K going on at the corner. We know we were working on that. We were working with county engineering to make those compatible. We all know about the Highway 181 widening improvements. There's a future turn lane at 64 and 54, which this same developer contributed towards. The Austin Road realignment is going on. One thing I wanted to highlight, we did get a traffic study when we heard all the concerns about traffic. The traffic engineer, Neil Schaefer, we selected him because you guys use him, a lot of the municipalities use him, does a really good job. He didn't see any warrants for improvements at any of the intersections. However, the developer is voluntarily going to put in a right turn lane on 181 to Rebel Road, even though it's not warranted. Also, as far as the traffic study, this wasn't, he approached it a little different for this to respond. We realize we have to do a traffic study when we come back with preliminary plat. We've already talked to Tyler at County Engineering. He wants us to wait until school's in and make sure we have all those counts correctly. So those are the traffic issues that we feel like are being addressed. So in this subdivision, we're proposing 80 by 140-foot lots. This is the same lot that is in Old Battles Village where I live. In fact, I live in one of these exact houses on that lot. Plenty big. So what is the difference between RSF2 and RSF3? And I realize I'm not throwing RSFE in there. We all know those are big estate lots. But the Waterford people had a lot of questions about this. In both of those zonings, you can do an 80-foot wide lot. Your maximum height structure is the same, maximum stories. Your front, rear, and side setbacks are the same, lot width. The only difference is the total square feet in the lot. So as you can see on the figure, you're just talking about a much deeper lot with a large backyard. Again, I live on one of these 140-foot deep lots. My backyard is very big. Here's the product that we're proposing here, the exact product that's in existing Waterford. These houses will range from $500,000 to $600,000 projected on today's construction cost. By the time this happens, it may be more. I just happened to look online for some houses selling in the area that's at or above the house prices in the area. So we feel like compatibility is not an issue. They are Truland homes, smart home enabled. It's a nice house. Here's some economic impact. I realize a zoning is a planning function. It's not based on economics, but we did want you to be aware that there would be some economic benefit to the community, including local income, business income, wages and salaries, taxes, those kind of things. I won't dwell on this too much, but there is an economic benefit. So this is where I really want to focus. This kind of gives you the picture of, we keep talking about a transition, and it depends on which direction you're going. Obviously, we're talking about a transition from this subject property to Highway 181, which logically is going to be a commercial corridor. Today it's zoned RSFE. The landowner that is the applicant for this property owns it. That definitely is going to be a commercial corridor at some point. There's commercial at 64. There's commercial right across the street. It's just logically commercial. So we have the RSF2, the RSFE, and this would just be a logical transition to a more intense. Again, this is not a high-density residential development. This is a medium-density residential development. The development pattern, I think Matthew's already covered this. We had prepared a bunch of slides. This just kind of walks through how development transpired in this area through the years. I won't bore you with all the details, but there's definitely a significant growth pattern here. So let's talk about compatible density. On the right is a list of subdivisions within 1/2 mile of the subject property. You have the total acres of the development and the total number of lots, which is how you calculate density. As you can see, most of them are in the 1.8 to 2 point whatever range. There's a couple of them, Austin Park Estates. Seemed like there was another one that was a lower density. But for the most part, all of them are right around 2 units per acre. Our proposed development is 1.9 units per acre. I know RSF3 allows 4.4. It's not physically possible with the spatial restrictions we have. So to address compatibility, the density is the same. The houses are the same. The lady brought up fire protection. Certainly, we're not going to engineer a project that doesn't have sufficient fire flows. We've already talked to the water authority there. We've already been in contact about sewer. That's not going to be an issue. We'll have sufficient fire flows to meet the ISO requirements. Again, the density, if you're just looking east, yes, there is 2.0 units per acre over there, which is what we're proposing. You look further to the west, it's much higher density. So we don't feel like we're out of kilter with what's going on in the area. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Y'all have any questions for Mr. Deal?
I have a question.
Yes.
I think that you look at this and I get it. I know what density is. Thank you for your explanation. But why not have pursued a different avenue rather than the RSF3 when you really are saying that you're only getting the density of RSF2? I mean, there was the plan unit development availability there, but the continuation to pursue the RSF3, is it because the Planning Commission recommended it? I'm just asking that question.
No, I mean, it's a valid question. As far as the RSF3 to RSF2, what the builder is seeing as a trend for smaller lots. People still want the bigger houses, but they don't want as much yard to upkeep, so that's one of the reasons for that. As far as going PUD, I'll be honest, we didn't even think about that. First I heard about it. It would give us the same thing because we're going to have plenty of open space. However, there's a lot more steps in that process, and so we just asking for RSF3.
That's the first you've heard about it?
Ma'am?
That's the first you've heard about it? I thought I mentioned that last month when we were here.
If you did, I didn't catch it.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Matthew, come back up here for just a second. Did you say that when they first submitted this to the planning department, you offered the PUD to them?
So when they first submitted it to us, I couldn't tell you whether or not they, usually they'll come in with a say, we need RSF, we're going to propose a subdivision here, we need RSF3, and then we'll say, we assume that they've kind of done their homework at that point, and we look at the viability of RSF3. It wasn't really till the Planning Commission presentations where it became really clear that, okay, wait a second, this could technically be achieved through the PRD process.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Deal? All right, thank you. Anybody else? Jessica?
Jessica McDill here for Tola Properties. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that I'd heard just from a historical and factual perspective, and that is as far as fire protection, there's a relatively new fire station not very far away, right on Milton Jones Road. You can see it from the intersection, which was donated, so there is brand-new fire protection available in the event. In planning forward, that was donated by Bertola, I think at the request of the city of Daphne, anticipating extensive residential development towards the east and east of 181. Also, as far as the commercial uses on 181 and the transition that Matthew talked about, you've got the restaurant at the corner, then you have an active trucking operation due south of that. Then you've got property owned by Yoda, which is under current development by the owner. It's in permitting right now. They've talked to Bertola about their project. So you've got commercial uses coming along that 181 corridor that makes sense, and that's what would make sense for the balance of that property as it abuts 181. As far as the school situation, we've had no objection or opposition to this project from the Baldwin County Board of Education. Just wanted to share those comments with you, and thank you.
Do y'all have any questions for Jessica? Thanks, Jessica. Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John Avent with SC Civil. I just want to clarify a couple of technical issues that some of the concerns the first person that came up here. One of the biggest items we heard was traffic, and that's the reason we voluntarily conducted a traffic study. What we did, we evaluated 5 of the major intersections, and what the traffic engineer concluded, which was a qualified traffic engineer, was the intersections are a level of service that are A and B, with the exception of I think it's Austin Road and 181. And that was a BC level of service, which is a good level of service. The other item that came up was drainage. We're not coming into this piece of property blind. We didn't, our firm, before we even go through a rezoning, we always look at drainage, utilities and such to make sure this project is even feasible. We did do an in-house drainage study and concluded that we can have 2 detention ponds on each side of isolated wetlands that will drain into the bottom area, and then the drainage goes east. And we feel very comfortable that we'll meet, if not exceed, the county regulations on drainage. Then again, David Deal went over the values of the houses. They will be compatible to the adjacent houses. Also, we not only did a drainage study, a traffic study, we also did a wetland study. And there are wetlands kind of in the center of this piece of property, and they are deemed isolated wetlands. They're not jurisdictional wetlands. So I want to cover that aspect of it. For Jessica went over about the fire protection and fire flow, we feel very comfortable after talking to Bill Forest Water that we can achieve all the fire flow. So with all that being said, we just didn't simply put in the application here. We came in did our homework. We feel very comfortable with the staff recommendation of this is a compatible use. We also went and did our technical background and our studies and everything, and feel very comfortable that this is a viable development. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Y'all have any questions for Mr. Avent? No. Thank you, sir. I would like to, I'm going to just ask somebody to come up here. Where's Zach at?
He just left.
All right.
You went grab him, he just left.
Nah, I just wanted to ask something. I'm just under the assumption that if, where's the fire chief at? that was in here. I'm under the assumption that the city of Daphne, who's got a very large fire department, are not going to let these volunteer fire departments struggle in the event of a fire. I just want to clarify that you're not going to just have 2 trucks putting out a fire in a subdivision. All of Daphne will be there. I know how these fire departments work. Fire districts are one thing. Just because it's in the Belfast Fire Department, I know for a fact that Daphne's going to run out there with their trucks and help assist with those fires if they're there. I mean, and they've got a squadron of fire trucks that can manage this. Yes, ma'am.
I understand that was the fire chief's words to me. He left because he had been told he wasn't going to be able to speak.
Come back up here if you want to speak, because we can't hear you from there.
Sorry. He left because he was.
That's fine.
Okay. But that was what he asked me to portray. That was his concern. That because those he like I said, he didn't think he could speak, so those were the notes he asked me to portray to you, because he doesn't. He's concerned about that.
What's he concerned about?
He's concerned that a higher density is going to create a increased risk for more structure, spread fires. The amount of water has not been a problem. It could concern him in the future, but the pressure has been in training a problem, and he is concerned about the number of homes to respond to, and then a gravity-fed system having trouble in the middle of the night or the middle of the day. Middle of the day would be a concern.
Okay. Thank you.
Did he reference the Daphne news station that's within sight of Rebel Road?
He did not. He talked to me about the concerns of, for instance, if there's a wreck on 64, they had this the other day. They can't even get to their fire trucks to be able to do things because they can't get past the accidents to get to what they need to be able to respond to accidents and things of that nature. But I think it's basically the fact that what they're talking about is the Daphne City fire response, and they will come if they're available and if they don't have something on their own going on. But the fire districts are there, and if my house burns to the ground because they're doing something else and we have all these responsibilities, I mean, it's not their responsibility. Yes, do I think they will help? Absolutely. If they're available, obviously they would.
Right, they're going to be available.
Yes, and I was on the city council when we approved to get that fire station put in there, and there's a 10-mile circle that if there's any fire within 10 miles of that station, they'll respond, and they won't be looking at county lines or city lines. I know that for a fact.
Thank you. Hey, Zach, if you don't mind, I was just, the citizens' concerns here was fire protection in Bell Forest at this area, this almost in Daphne. I mean, it's technically sandwiched, kind of, but I just wanted to clear for the citizens' minds that in the event of a fire, instead of 2 trucks responding from Bell Forest, that the city of Daphne would also partake in the rescue efforts.
Yeah, something that the public may not be aware of in a case like this is that the fire departments, where it's volunteer or your municipal fire department, have mutual aid agreements in place. There is a process through the 911 system that when there's a fire in Bell Forest, Daphne and other fire departments, depending on what type of fire, whether it was confirmed, not confirmed, whatever the case may be, it's very quick to page those out, and then the incident commander will either say, yes, we have a problem, quit, send the units, or we do not have a problem, discontinue running code to the scene.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just want, yes, ma'am. You got to come up here.
Sure, come up. Identify yourself, please.
Is this about fire?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. And we keep, and I want to say that one thing keeps getting said, that more density. They're not creating any more density than what's already in Waterford. If it's only 2.9 houses per lot, they're not increasing any more density. So.
1.9.
Or 1.9, excuse me.
It shows the zoning as it is now.
It's this lot size. There is a...
Yeah, but they could put 4 houses on 1 acre instead of 1.9. But they're choosing to put 1.9 on 1 acre.
Out of the kindness of their hearts. Okay, my name's Marina Merritt. I've spoken before. I live on Rebel Road. There is not a single residence surrounding this property that's already, the RSF2 that's already there, Waterford was there before the district advisory committee said, we're going to do this RSFE and RSF1. It was already there. Can't do anything about that now. But everything else around that, nobody that lives on this has less than an acre lot with one house. Not a single person. Most of them are 2 acres, 5 acres, 7 acres. We have a lot of people on large lots. That's why we all bought there. We knew that. Mr. Bertola knew that when he purchased this less than a year ago. Actually, it was June 21st, so we're a little past a year. He knew what he was doing. He had plans. We are here asking you. We are your citizens. We are the ones who vote for you, who put our faith and our trust in you. We have over 130 names of people opposed to this. There is no one for it but the developer. Leave it as it is. Don't change the character of Bell Forest just because somebody wants to put more houses in. We understand people want to live here. It's a wonderful place. I understand you love our county. We love our county. So please take that into consideration. All of these people are your people. We're asking you to do what's right for us, not what's right for a developer, not what's right for all the people that want to live here. We're already overburdened. Our infrastructure, we've got to fix that, and then we have to prepare for future development. We've got to be responsible about this. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to live in Bell Forest. Or Baldwin County, because it's just too much. I'm urging you to do what we're asking, your people are asking you to do. Leave it the way it is. Don't rezone it for any reason. If anything, rezone the RS2 back to RSFE, the way it was meant to be, the way your advisory committee. And as far as flooding, I did submit this letter from Kenneth Underwood, saying the conversion of this agricultural land to a dense residential use, and it's dense compared to where we all live, it is dense, will greatly increase the total volume of stormwater runoff for all rainstorm events. Development of detention ponds will be severely limited because of the wetland acreage along Picard Branch, which, by the way, has been having dirt pushed into it on this property. There are wetlands, but we're covering them up with dirt, and nobody's saying a word about it. Even if adequate detention ponds are developed to limit the post-project peak discharge rate to the pre-project discharge rate, the total volume of stormwater discharge will be significantly increased. We are already having flooding issues that we have never had before because of subdivisions that are covering up the ground. It can't absorb it anymore. So please, listen to your people. Listen to the 17% that show up to vote every time for you.
Thank you. Commissioners, y'all have any comments? You got to turn your mic on.
We're still in the public.
Yeah.
Not in the public.
Okay.
No.
Anybody else wish to speak? I just want to, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Commission, I just want to stress to y'all that, and y'all know this, motion will be made either to accept our staff's recommendation, which will deny the Planning Commission's recommendation, or to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and deny our staff's recommendation. So I want one of those two motions made, if you don't mind. As far as comments on the project, go ahead. Who's got comments first?
Yeah, I do. We're here for a rezoning. We're not here for a subdivision approval. And I think that a lot of the comments that are made are comments that are concerns in the subdivision process, even though you can't ignore what someone wants to do with the property in the future. And when you look at a rezoning, It's definitely not finite. There is a judge and a jury, and I never wanted to be one of those at all. But we're put in that position, and if you're always supposed to just rubber stamp everything, then why are we here? So it really does take into play this entire process where that there is 2 public hearings that occur. You have the public hearing before the Planning Commission. You have the public hearing that occurs before the County Commission meeting. This has been one of the toughest cases I've ever approached. So yesterday, on my way back from Bay Minette, I drove through, I think, every one of the subdivisions on the southeast quadrant of 181 and 64, all the way down through Jubilee Farms and the Grove, and then back over through, I can't even keep all your names apart, but I started on Austin Road, went down, went through Waterford, went to the dead end where the Pros property is. I don't know, I drive a blue tag with flashy lights, so I don't know if some people cutting their grass was wondering what's going on, but I didn't have the flashy lights on. But it was interesting, just the observation. You guys are wall-to-wall houses over there. And you are. So I go back to my office and I sit in front of my computer screen. I spent about an hour in your neighborhood. Got a lot of hellos. Dark windows, so you probably didn't know who was in there. Probably thought I was a cop. Anyways, I started looking at the lot sizes in your neighborhood, and I started looking at the lot sizes in the areas that are in Daphne, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jubilee Farms, and I think I even passed through one that said the Grove. Is that correct? Yeah. They all just kind of blend together there. So when you're looking at rezoning, you're looking at compatibility. We are forced to deal with these stretched out annexations that, you got Daphne way down here and Daphne over here, and you got county all in the middle. And I looked at lot sizes when I went to the computer screen. You can go to the county's map and you can right click on the map and you can do the calculation, and I didn't come up in the Common Core world, so I know how to just multiply this by this and get that. And I did some calculations on Waterford, did some calculations on Jubilee Farms, and I think that there would have been a way to have accomplished this, and I think that this is something that, frankly, you're sitting on, it could go one way or it could go another way. I know it's always a yes or a no, it ain't an in-between. But this is a rezoning, this is not a subdivision application, and it's nice enough for the applicant to give us the proposed, what they want to do with this. And I do see a lot of wetlands on this land. And what I saw was, really and truly, if you didn't have that big wetland in the middle and you were able to develop all of it, if you took the number of housing lots that were proposed in the proposal, even though we're not looking at a subdivision, we're looking at a rezoning, the density issue is that you're probably not any more dense than you would be because of the constraints of the property. But we are looking at a rezoning. We're not looking at a subdivision. And so I feel like that there is a process that is available when you have constraints on your property, and the fact that that was not looked at, I think, was an oversight, and it is what it is. So I think the character of your neighborhood is very unique, although I don't desire, you don't have to worry about me moving over there. I live on 38 acres, and I'm in unzoned Baldwin County, and it scares me to death sometimes. Not like scared to death, I'm sorry, that was a horrible thing, but I could have HDR right next to me in a heartbeat, because if the farmer next door to my farm wanted to sell, it could happen. But you guys came in one time in the last couple decades and you decided that I want to see something happen in my neighborhood. It's a citizen-driven process. This is, you decided that you wanted to see this, and for your, I think that our comprehensive plan, when you said it really doesn't show one way or another under our current master plan is a better word for it. It doesn't give you the right guidance for future use of these lands. It just says residential. Residential could be HDR. Am I correct? Yeah. So you could go from 12 people per acre to half a person per acre. I guess that's what an estate lot is, right? A half a person. I don't think you could cut somebody in half. Even the Bible told us that. So for y'all sitting out there, you got a lot of valid points, but some of them aren't valid points. Your points about the fire and all that, that's nice to mention, but that comes about in the subdivision part. What I'm looking at is the character. I'm looking at, should you rezone, should you not rezone, riding through there, compatibility. I look at I did like the presentation that you had when you said the percentages that are RSF2 versus RSF3. I can see that on the map. I had already looked at that. I didn't know the percentages. I still don't even remember what you said, but it's very low as far as where the RSF3 may be in some areas. So I just want to say that this is not an easy situation. It is very difficult, and I think both sides. I think the citizens can come up with all kind of things, and I think the developers or the applicant can come up with all kind of things trying to make their case. That's why I didn't choose to be a lawyer. No offense, Brad. I'm an accountant, but it still doesn't mean that you see everything in black and white. But thank you for listening to me.
I won't take near that long. We need to get on with it. This is a zoning question, not a subdivision question. So I'm about us moving forward. We've spent plenty of time rehashing things.
Commissioner Gruber, do you have anything you would like to add?
No questions. Ready to let's get moving.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So we're going to get moving with this. I'm going to point out a couple of things that I noticed. The Waterford subdivision, which some of y'all live in, was not there in 2010. 2010, there was a couple houses in there, and then it became owned by Whitney Bank because it went into foreclosure. The very person that's developing the land that wants to develop this in this rezoning case is the one that bought the Waterford and built the houses for all y'all to live in. Now, with me saying that, I can promise you, we had the same people here then saying, we don't want these houses here. We cannot have any more houses built in Bell Forest area. Mm-hmm. That was in that time frame. It happens every single time somebody even mentions about building houses. People who now live in houses are saying they don't want any more houses. Those very houses, though, were every single subdivision that probably comes into this county seems like it's got opposition from one side and not from the other. That's just how subdivisions work. And I think that, this extension here, if they're going to do all the stuff they say they're going to do, I mean, it is what it is. So with that being said, well, is there a motion? Who's going to entertain the motion? I need a motion from somebody. I mean, if I can make one, I'd do it.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we support I believe I got it right. It's been so long ago that we talked about it, but the advisory committee's recommendation, not the staff's recommendation.
Hang on just a second. We don't have an advisory committee here. So staff's recommendation was to approve this project. The planning commission's recommendation was to deny this project.
Okay. Then excuse me?
Never mind.
I make a motion that we approve the staff's recommendation to approve this project. and make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second it.
We got a motion by Commissioner Davis, a second by Commissioner Gruber to approve this rezoning case. Any further discussion?
The only thing, it's like you said, Commissioner Ball, I can remember when none of this was developed, and it's just getting more and more and more and more. Maybe if something in the last 15, 20 years would have changed something, but this is the area that everybody wants to live in. They don't want to live in the city limits of Daphne. They don't want to live in the city limits of Fairhope. They want to live out here. And what they've done is it's a self-created place to live. The density has been created by the people living there. And there's a lot of open land that happened to go up on market, and you had a willing seller and a willing buyer, and now it's where it's at today. I don't know how to completely stop it. There's no way to completely stop it. I mean, it just got to be. I don't know.
All right, so Commissioner Gruber, if I'm not mistaken, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve staff's recommendation for this rezoning case, and I'm going to take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
3-1, motion passes. We'll give everybody a chance to exit out. Guys, we're not postponing that meeting. We will start our meeting after this one. So
we want to have a little break?
We can. We're not taking a lunch break or anything. We're going right through. Okay? Okay. All right, so with those people exiting, because we've got people here, we've got all of our elected officials here. We're not going to make them wait. Commissioner Gruber, we need to pay the bill.
Okay.
Is there any committee reports? Any committee reports, Ron?
No, sir.
Okay. He's not going to tell me if there is. Payment of the bills. Skip.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion we pay the bills totaling $7,957,230.40, with the exception of those vendors that a commission requested to be pulled, which there are none. And of this amount, $5,230,931.79 is payable to the Baldwin County Board of Education, and $386,915.61 is payable to Gulf Shores Board of Education for their portion of the county sales and use tax.
You heard the motion by Commissioner Gruber.
Second.
All right, got a second by Commissioner Underwood to pay the bills. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, EA2 takes care of itself. We have other staff recommendations. FA1 was for discussion topics only yesterday, and we will be addressing that at another day.
That'll be fine, Mr. Chairman.
All right, FA2, this was a great presentation done by Brian Peacock yesterday with our parks department at Live Oak, how they have upgraded their website and to make it more user-friendly. It eliminates all of the booking requirements in person. You can do this all online now. There's some fee changes, all that stuff. He went through that presentation yesterday. Commissioners, we need to vote on this revision of the policy, and if you would, read the red.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept this revision of Baldwin County Commission Policy Number 2.23, reservation of Live Oak Landing and Bicentennial Park facilities. There's a replacement attachment, park rules and regulations. CIS staff will demonstrate new online reservation system and website for Live Oak Landing Bicentennial Parks during the 7/18 work session.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Commissioner Underwood, a second by Commissioner Davis to pass item FA2. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Commissioner requests.
No.
Okay.
If I could, I want to thank the three of you up here with me. And more.
You want to do comments or requests?
Okay, I don't want to do a request.
We're going to save that farewell thing for a minute. Hang on just a second. Unless you're requesting to do something else.
No.
All right.
We do have to addenda.
I got that. I think he thought it was Commissioner comments time, and I just want to get through this agenda, and then we'll do our comments. So let's see, addenda, we have HA1, it's the pipeline easement agreement. Y'all have a motion on that?
Motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve item HA1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
HA2 is a letter of support for a grant for Mobile. We got a motion by Commissioner Gruber. Hang on, y'all. Motion by Commissioner Underwood, second by Commissioner Gruber to approve item HA2. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Anything, Ron?
No, sir.
Thank you. Anything, Brad?
David Connors here for an executive session, sir.
So we've got a executive session to go into after this meeting, I guess in between the meetings. So hang tight, it will not take long. Public comments. Okay. Press questions. The guy was here, he left. Anybody else here from the press? All right.
No questions.
No questions? Okay. Thank you for being here. Now for the commissioner comments.
All right, I'll start. Thank y'all, staff. This was great. This was a great big agenda. 1,032 pages was in this agenda. That's a lot. And there's a lot of work went into with the Planning Commission and all these other groups, and then the citizens turning out was a good thing. And just thank you all for what y'all doing. I just think we're heading in the right direction. That's all my comments.
I'll make them brief. Thank you very much. Again, ditto the staff. There's a lot went into this meeting. I knew that it would pass. Not that because it's your last one, that's not it. It just, I knew there was a lot of items that were on here. And Joe, I just want to thank you for all you've done for the people and for your time spent here. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. My turn?
Yeah.
All right, you think I can be a pain in your butt? Let me tell you the lady that's sitting here that I want her to stand up. We've been married 53 years. She's the best thing that ever happened to me.
I think she left.
No, she's right here. Stand up, baby. I've said it before and I mean it. Anything I've accomplished has been because of her, because she's instilled in me and our family, do the right thing the right way for the right reasons. So thank you, baby. Thank you, Jeff.
That's all you got to say?
That's all I got to say, baby.
I mean, it's your last meeting. That's all you got.
Last meeting. I thought we were going to go over into nighttime or something.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's an ending and a start today. We have Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Underwood and I all came in at the same time. We all went through the same crazy training classes together. We've been with each other for predominantly 4 years with Commissioner Underwood, and I was on the campaign trail with Commissioner Davis a whole year prior to our election. And one thing I think I'm going to do is I'm still going to write and author the book of Joe-isms, and I'm going to compile all your sayings and make a little book one day, and I'll give you a cut of the money if you need it. But I think it'd be inspirational to have some of those around. As we get bigger, we'll get better. But I did. We were neglected, Joe. Some things, just an oversight by a few people. When I saw the new elected commissioner that's not a commissioner yet, but he's going to be there one day, and I saw a nice badge on his pocket, that none of us had for 4 years. And I said, what is that? And he said, oh, that's the key card to get into all our buildings. I said, so you don't have to use your wallet or keys and all this stuff? He said, no, this is easy. You just take this. And I said, how'd you get that? He said, well, Brian Peacock. And I gave him. So what I do, Brian, I sent Brian a text message. I said, how the heck do we get one of these easy things, right?
And we all got one.
And so we got them, boy. Got it right here, boy. I can just whip it and it's ready to go, right? No more reaching in my pocket for wallets, or like I seen Judge Wilters do, and he hugs the doors with his pocket. So Joe, I mean, this ain't gonna work anywhere. But I got Commissioner Davis a badge made so he can have a commemorative badge. And if you don't ever want to clip it on, man, look at what he gave you. Nice. So there's your official badge. It's 4 years too late. So thank you, Brian, for making that happen for me. I always like. I mean, this has been, as y'all have seen, a very contentious meeting. What we do up here is the hardest job in the world. I don't care what anybody says. It's hard. We have to make somebody mad while we're making somebody happy, and vice versa. And I don't know how many of y'all want to sit up here, but it's not fun sometimes. Today was one of those days. Matthew, thank you so much for you and your staff bringing this together, because you have created a system with this planning and zoning department that makes it simple not only for us to understand, but for the public to understand as well, because those step-by-step guidelines, when you put it on these screens, it's irrefutable. I mean, so I appreciate what you do. I appreciate all that goes into that. So with that being said, where's my lawyer at that's going to take us into executive session?
Right here, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Connor is going to make the declaration that's required. I would recommend that the Commission adopt a motion to adjourn this meeting and convene an executive session to discuss with your attorney the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation, controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated, or imminently likely to be litigated if the governmental body pursues a proposed course of action. And Mr. Connor will make his statement on the record.
I feel like after this meeting, I'll invite Matthew Brown up here to help me. But in any event, this executive session will last approximately 10 minutes. I make the oral declaration that the discussion is appropriate for executive session. You will not be asked to take any action after the executive session, so if you would like to adjourn this meeting, then you can do that from the executive session.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we take legal advice relative to going into an executive session.
And I'll second that motion.
We got a motion and a second by Commissioner Gruber to go into executive session for approximately 10 minutes. We're going to try to make it 5. With that being said, after we take the vote, I will make a declaration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we will not reconvene this meeting. It will adjourn at the executive session is over with. Thank y'all.